Beneath the waves, buried in silence for thousands of years, lie cities no one remembers, temples where gods were once worshipped, palaces of the rich and powerful, entire civilizations swallowed whole by the sea. But here's what they don't teach you in history class. Over 200 ancient cities have already been discovered beneath the world's oceans. And the most shocking part? They're not supposed to be there. A sunken Stonehenge in the Pacific, a pyramid off the coast of Cuba, ignored by mainstream science, chariot wheels deep in the Red Sea, perfectly preserved for 3,000 years, and a megalithic complex near the Pillars of Hercules, aligned with the stars, as if built by a civilization that knew the cosmos better than we do. These aren't shipwrecks. These aren't natural formations. These are cities built by human hands, then erased by cataclysm. Was Atlantis real? Did a global flood wipe out an advanced prehistoric world? And why do these ruins, scattered from Japan to the Azores, share the same impossible precision, the same mysterious symbols, the same fate? This is not speculation. This is evidence. And today, we dive into the truth they tried to drown. Welcome to the lost world beneath the waves, where history begins at the bottom of the ocean. Before we dive into it, just a quick note. While the visuals in this video will provide extra context, they aren't necessary to enjoy the stories. Feel free to let this play in the background while you work, relax, or even fall asleep to these eerie, of shocking submerged ancient mysteries. The underwater ruins of Baiae, Rome's sunken city of vice and volcanoes. What if the most luxurious, most scandal-plagued resort city in the world, the ancient Roman equivalent of Las Vegas, simply vanished beneath the waves? This isn't a myth. It's not the legend of Atlantis. It is the very real story of a place called Baiae. For centuries, Baiae was the ultimate playground for the Roman elite, a city of staggering wealth, wild parties, and deadly political games. But it was destroyed not by war, but by the very volcanoes that gave it life. Today, its spectacular villas, temples, and spas lie at the bottom of the ocean, a ghost city perfectly preserved in salt water. So, let's bring Baiae back to life. We'll explore its opulent ruins, uncover the imperial scandals that played out within its walls, and see how modern archaeology is raising this lost world from the depths. We're going to uncover the secrets of its golden age, witness its slow, silent death, and explore the hauntingly beautiful ruins that remain today. 2,000 years ago, on the sun-soaked coast of Italy, in the Gulf of Naples, one place outshone all others: Baiae. Long before anyone had heard of Capri or Pompeii, Baiae was the spot for the Roman world's wealthiest and most powerful citizens. They were drawn by the mild climate and, more importantly, by its natural volcanic hot springs. Roman engineers, true masters of their craft, channeled this geothermally heated water into magnificent public and private bathhouses. But these weren't just for getting clean. They were the hubs of society, business, and healing. People traveled from all over the empire to soak in the mineral-rich waters, convinced they could cure almost any sickness. But wellness was just part of the appeal. Baiae was, for all intents and purposes, the Roman Empire's Sin City, a place built for pleasure where all rules were off. The philosopher Seneca the Younger, who was not a fan of wild parties, called it a vortex of luxury and a harbor of vice. The poet Propertius went even further, calling it a den of licentiousness. Just picture it, sprawling villas built right into the cliffs, with lush gardens spilling down to the sea. Inside, rooms were decorated with stunning mosaics, and walls were covered in precious marble from across the empire. Feasts went on for days, powered by endless wine and exotic food. The strict morality of Rome was a distant memory here. The socialite Clodia became infamous after being accused in court of acting like a prostitute at the crowded resort of Baiae, throwing wild beach parties and getting into long drinking sessions. It was a place where, as one writer put it, old women acted like young girls, and some men acted like girls too. The buildings themselves were a spectacle. Structures we now call the temples of Mercury, Venus, and Diana weren't actually for worship. They were enormous thermal spas with groundbreaking domed roofs that pushed the limits of architecture. These weren't just buildings, they were statements of power, showing that the elite were so rich they could build paradise on Earth. Where you find that much wealth and power, you'll always find intrigue. Baiae wasn't just a resort, it was a shadow capital where the biggest names in Roman history came to relax and to plot. Almost every major figure of the late Republic and early Empire had a villa here, including Julius Caesar. Emperor Nero built a massive private estate, and it's believed Emperor Hadrian spent his final days in Baiae, dying in his villa in 138 AD. The notoriously cruel and extravagant Emperor Caligula treated the city like his personal stage. With their hidden rooms and private gardens, the city's villas were the perfect setting for political conspiracies. Away from the watchful eyes of the Roman Senate, deals were made, alliances were formed, and betrayals were planned. It was here, in the glamorous chaos of Baiae, that Julia Agrippina allegedly plotted to kill her husband, Emperor Claudius, so that her son, Nero, could take the throne. And Nero's own dark history is tied to this place. Not far from Baiae's shores, he ordered the murder of his own mother, Agrippina. The city's anything-goes atmosphere seemed to bring out the worst in its powerful visitors. While there are rumors that Cleopatra fled from Baiae after Caesar's assassination, these stories are likely just legends, as historical sources show she remained in Rome for about a month before returning to Egypt. But it wasn't all emperors and assassinations. Baiae was the scene of high society scandals that would make today's tabloids look tame. The wild behavior of people like Clodia cemented Baiae's reputation as a place where the rich and powerful could escape judgment and indulge their every fantasy. It was a city of secrets, where pleasure and danger were two sides of the same golden coin. This glittering paradise was built on shaky ground. Baiae owed its very existence to the same forces that would eventually destroy it. The city sat right on top of the Campi Flegraei, or Phlegraean Fields, a massive, active volcanic supercaldera. The Romans believed this was the home of Vulcan, the god of fire. The underground magma chambers that heated Baiae's famous springs were part of a sleeping giant. Unlike Pompeii, which was wiped out in a single violent eruption of Mount Vesuvius, Baiae's end was slow and silent. The city was the victim of a strange geological process called Brataseism. Think of the Earth's crust as something that can breathe. Brataseism is the gradual rising and falling of the ground as magma chambers deep underground swell and deflate. For centuries, the land under Baiae was slowly, almost invisibly sinking. Starting around the 4th century AD, the owners of the waterfront villas would have noticed the sea getting closer. Year after year, decade after decade, the ground dropped. Marble floors that once hosted wild parties were now washed by the waves. But Brataseism wasn't the only problem. The city was also sacked by Muslim raiders in the 8th century, which sped up its decline. By the 1500s, with much of the lower city already underwater and the area plagued by malaria, the once great resort was almost completely abandoned. There was no single dramatic explosion. Instead, nature simply and inevitably reclaimed what was hers. The city drowned. For hundreds of years, Baiae was just a memory, its treasures hidden beneath the waves. Fishermen sometimes pulled up Roman artifacts in their nets, but no one knew the true scale of what lay below. That all changed in the 1940s and 50s. An Italian Air Force pilot named Raimondo Boucher was flying over the coast on a clear day when he saw something incredible: the ghostly outline of a sunken town. His aerial photos gave the world its first real look at the lost city. As scuba diving technology improved, archaeologists began exploring in the 1960s, and what they found was breathtaking. Today, the area is the underwater archaeological park of Baiae, a protected marine zone where history is preserved in a stunning aquatic embrace. You can now visit this sunken world. Glass-bottom boats float over ancient Roman streets, giving you a godlike view of the ruins. Snorkelers and scuba divers can swim right through what's left of this incredible city. It's a surreal experience, gliding over gorgeous mosaic floors like the one at the Villa a Pretiro, its patterns still sharp after centuries underwater. Divers can explore the Nymphaeum of Emperor Claudius, a grand banquet hall whose original statues have been moved to a museum for protection and replaced with exact replicas. The sea has preserved Baiae in a way the land never could have. You can see the remains of colonnades, marble walkways, and even the original lead pipes that carried water to the city's baths and villas. And the work never stops. Archaeologists are constantly making new finds, like the recent discovery and restoration of a spectacular marble floor from a high-status villa, its geometric patterns a testament to the city's lost splendor. The story of Baiae is still being written, one shimmering, submerged piece at a time. The story of Baiae is a clash of two great forces, human ambition and the power of nature. It's a tale of a civilization that built a monument to pleasure and excess, but it's also a powerful reminder that even the greatest empires are at the mercy of the planet. The ruins that now lie in 5 to 13 meters of water are more than just a tourist site. They are a direct portal to the Roman world. The same halls where emperors once plotted are now home to schools of fish. The courtyards that once echoed with laughter now hear only the gentle push of the current. Baiae is a paradox, a city of vice that became a time capsule, a playground for the powerful that became a monument to impermanence. It serves as a beautiful and profound warning, echoing from the deep, reminding us that what is built can be unbuilt, what is lost can be found, and that the sea will always keep its secrets, waiting for us to explore them. The Bermuda Triangle's sunken structures. Are there ancient ruins under the Devil's Sea? There's one legend that just won't die, Atlantis. It's the ultimate ghost story, a tale of a brilliant civilization with otherworldly technology, wiped off the map in a single day, swallowed by the sea. For centuries, explorers have hunted for it everywhere, from the Mediterranean to the Caribbean. But the question has always been, what if we're all looking in the wrong place? What if the answer has been waiting for us, in a corner of the world already famous for making things disappear? For decades, many have chased the idea that the key to Atlantis was in the Bermuda Triangle. A famous clue, the Bimini Road, sparked a frenzy of excitement. But what if that road wasn't the destination, but just a single breadcrumb on a much longer trail? Now, forget the Bermuda Triangle for a second. We need to talk about its mysterious and even more notorious twin on the other side of the planet, a place Japanese sailors call Mano Uni, the Devil's Sea. The stories surrounding these two spots are so similar, it's hard to ignore. The story of Atlantis starts with Plato, the Greek philosopher, way back around 360 BC. He told a story of a massive island, a powerhouse kingdom located just beyond the Pillars of Hercules. Its people were brilliant architects and engineers who built a stunning city of concentric circles of land and water. But, as the story goes, they grew arrogant and the gods weren't pleased. In one day and night of misfortune, earthquakes and floods sank the entire island, and it vanished. While that legend was being passed down, another was being written in the logbooks of sailors. Two specific spots on the globe, thousands of miles apart, were earning scary reputations. The first is the Bermuda Triangle, a stretch of the Atlantic between Florida, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico. The second is its eerie reflection in the Pacific, the Devil's Sea, also known as the Dragon's Triangle, just south of Tokyo. Both are infamous for tales of ships and planes vanishing without a trace, of compasses spinning uselessly, and of seas that flip from calm to monstrous in a heartbeat. For years, the mystery of Atlantis and the mystery of the triangles were two separate puzzles. But what if they were always connected? The modern hunt kicks off not in the Devil's Sea, but in the Bermuda Triangle. In 1968, divers off the coast of Bimini in the Bahamas found something that looked impossible: a road under the ocean. Made of huge, rectangular limestone blocks laid out in a straight line, it didn't look like the work of nature. For a moment, it felt like the myth was becoming real. It didn't hurt that a famous American psychic, Edgar Cayce, had predicted years earlier that proof of Atlantis would be found near Bimini in 68 or 69. It was easy to imagine this being the foundation of some great ancient harbor. But science had other ideas. Geologists swarmed the site, and their conclusion was pretty much unanimous. The Bimini Road is a natural formation. It's a classic example of beach rock, where sediments cement together and fracture in surprisingly geometric patterns. The straight lines and right angles? A geological coincidence. While a few still argue it's man-made, the overwhelming scientific consensus is that it's a fascinating but natural wonder. For mainstream science, the road was a dead end. But for those trying to connect the dots, it was just the first clue. This is where the story goes from the sunlit shallows to the crushing dark depths of the ocean, and from geology to fringe theory. While the Bimini Road was being debated, far stranger rumors began to surface. These weren't from scientists, but from anecdotal accounts and sensational stories. Whispers of massive pyramid-shaped structures, some supposedly made of glass or crystal, sitting on the seabed nearly 2,000 feet down. There were claims of sprawling city grids showing up on sonar, fueling the idea that Bimini wasn't a standalone ruin, but maybe an outpost to a much bigger, deeper metropolis. These claims are wild, and they feed right back into the psychic lore. Edgar Cayce had also spoken of a great crystal that powered Atlantis, an energy source so powerful and unstable it supposedly caused the island's destruction. Believers in the pyramid theory argue that this crystal energy is what's still causing the strange electromagnetic problems reported in the triangle. But let's be clear, this is where the line between fact and fiction gets completely erased. Despite decades of exhaustive seafloor mapping by official bodies like the US Navy and NOAA, there is zero credible, peer-reviewed evidence for any of these underwater pyramids. The so-called discoveries remain entirely in the realm of sensational books and websites, unverified by science. The sonar pings are what experts would call noise, equipment glitches, or just wishful thinking. So, are there phantom cities in the deep? Or are they just echoes of a myth we desperately want to be true? The lore of these paranormal hotspots is powerful. Writers like Charles Berlitz did a lot to popularize the idea that the Bermuda Triangle and the Devil's Sea were the real location of Atlantis. He suggested that an ancient Atlantean power grid was still active, causing the bizarre disappearances. This was all wrapped up in a pseudoscientific theory of vile vortices, 12 supposed paranormal hotspots on Earth, which include both the Bermuda Triangle and the Devil's Sea. It's a great story. But for every one of these paranormal claims, science has a more down-to-earth, and sometimes even more dramatic, explanation. For starters, the mysterious disappearances aren't that mysterious when you consider the traffic. The Bermuda Triangle is one of the most heavily traveled shipping lanes in the world, and it's plagued by violent, unpredictable weather, like hurricanes and rogue waves. Then there's the compass issue. It's often said a compass here points to true north instead of magnetic north, but that's a misunderstanding. The region is near the agonic line, a shifting area where magnetic and true north happen to align. For any mariner not accounting for that variation, it could lead to critical navigational mistakes. But the most stunning theory involves methane hydrates. Huge deposits of this frozen gas are on the seafloor. Scientists have shown in labs that if a massive amount were to suddenly erupt, it could create a frothy plume of gas-filled water so low in density that a ship would instantly lose buoyancy and sink like a rock, leaving no trace. These same explanations apply to the Devil's Sea, which sits on the Pacific Ring of Fire, a hotbed of seismic activity. A perfect example is the Japanese research vessel, the Kaio Maru No. 5. In 1952, it vanished with its 31 crew members. The mystery fueled paranormal theories for years, but the cause was eventually found. The ship had sailed directly over an underwater volcano as it erupted. So, after all this, have we finally found Atlantis in the Devil's Sea? The straight answer is no. There is no credible scientific evidence of a sunken city in either the Devil's Sea or the Bermuda Triangle. The Bimini Road is almost certainly a natural wonder, and the tales of glass pyramids are unverified legends. The very real dangers of both regions can be explained by a perfect storm of wild weather, extreme geology, and plain old human error. And yet, the legend of Atlantis is more powerful than ever. It survives because the scientific facts, while logical, can't completely kill the romance of a great mystery. Logic doesn't quite cover the feeling of unease these places inspire, or erase every strange report. The story of Atlantis gives us a single epic answer to 100 smaller, nagging questions. What we do know is that our oceans still hold incredible secrets. Whether the true source of these legends is a lost chapter of human history or just the raw, untamed power of our planet, the search will continue. The Devil's Sea and the Bermuda Triangle are still powerful symbols of the great unknown, reminding us that plenty of our world remains a total mystery. What other secrets are they still hiding in the deep? The underwater pyramid near the Azores, natural or man-made? Deep beneath the Atlantic, in the volcanic islands of the Azores, lies a mystery that seems to rewrite our understanding of the ancient world. Back in 2013, a sailor charting the seabed stumbled upon something that just shouldn't be there, a massive pyramid-shaped structure. The discovery instantly sparked a huge debate. Is this some bizarre geological quirk, a freak of nature forged by volcanoes? Or could it be the impossible remnant of a forgotten civilization lost to the sea thousands of years ago? We're going to explore the evidence on both sides to figure out what's really going on with the underwater pyramid of the Azores. Just off the coast of Portugal, between the islands of Terceira and São Miguel, sits a structure that has puzzled scientists since its discovery. It's a pyramid, rising about 60 meters from the ocean floor, with a base that covers 8,000 square meters, and it appears to have perfect geometric angles. Its discoverer claimed it was perfectly shaped and oriented by the cardinal points, a detail that, if it's true, would be a wild coincidence for a natural hill. This isn't just another lump on the seafloor. It's an anomaly that pits hard science against the incredible possibility that a chapter of human history has been completely overlooked. The story kicks off in 2013 with Diocleciano Silva, a local sailor who was mapping the ocean depths for new fishing spots. Using off-the-shelf sonar, he got a ping from an enormous and shockingly regular shape below. The image that popped up on his screen wasn't the usual rugged terrain of a volcanic seabed. It was a pyramid, with 4 straight edges and a flat top, looking a whole lot like ancient structures we see on land. Silva was totally convinced he'd found something man-made. He reported that its corners aligned with north, south, east, and west, a signature of sophisticated ancient building, most famously seen in the Great Pyramid of Giza. That kind of alignment is often seen as a sign of intelligent design. For a natural formation to pull that off would be, to put it mildly, statistically unlikely. The discovery immediately threw gasoline on the fire of speculation, with many pointing to one legendary name, Atlantis. Plato's story of a powerful island nation that sank into the sea in a single day and night of misfortune has fascinated people for centuries. He said it was located beyond the Pillars of Hercules, which most people take to mean the Strait of Gibraltar. The Azores, way out in the Atlantic, fit that general description perfectly. Could this pyramid be the first real evidence of Plato's lost city? The theory gets a little more interesting when you look at the islands themselves. For a long time, the official story was that the Azores were empty until the Portuguese showed up in the 15th century. But some researchers, like Nuno Ribeiro of the Portuguese Association of Archaeological Research, say they've found evidence of a much earlier human presence. Discoveries on Pico and Terceira Islands include rock art and structures that some believe predate the Portuguese by thousands of years. These include ancient burial sites and other structures that hint at a mysterious pre-Portuguese culture. If people were living on the Azores that long ago, could they have built the pyramid? Supporters of the man-made theory think these discoveries on land are the missing link, pointing to a civilization that was advanced enough to build something huge before their home sank beneath the waves.
As exciting as the idea of a lost city is, the scientific community is for the most part not buying it. Geologists and the Portuguese Navy were quick to offer a much more down-to-earth explanation. They argue the pyramid isn't man-made at all, but a natural volcanic formation. Specifically, they think it's part of the de João de Castro Bank, a huge underwater volcano in the exact same spot. You have to remember the Azores aren't just sitting there peacefully. They're located right on the mid-Atlantic ridge, one of the most volcanically and tectonically active places on Earth. This is a spot where new land is always being created. The de João de Castro Bank itself has a pretty dramatic past. In 1720, a volcanic eruption there was so massive it created a whole new island, which was then washed away by the ocean just 2 years later. The area is littered with volcanic cones and vents. From a geological standpoint, pyramid-like shapes can be formed by erosion, but in a volcanic zone, they can also be created by the way lava erupts and cools underwater. As magma pushes up, it can form steep conical hills. Later fractures and shifts can create features that look surprisingly geometric. Nature is full of geometry, after all. Scientists say the Azores pyramid is probably just another example of that. But the biggest argument against it being man-made is the timeline. Geologists estimate the spot where the pyramid sits went underwater about 20,000 years ago, at the end of the last ice age. As the glaciers melted, the sea rose and swallowed this entire area. And here's the problem. Mainstream archaeology shows the first human civilizations capable of building massive structures didn't appear until around 3000 BC in Mesopotamia. That's about 17,000 years after the Azores site was already deep underwater. The idea that a civilization existed 20,000 years ago with the tools and organization to build a pyramid of this scale is, based on what we know, pretty much impossible. There's just no other evidence anywhere in the world of that kind of human activity so long ago.
With two stories that are so completely at odds, it all comes down to the evidence. And this is where things get a little murky. The original discovery, remember, was made with private, non-professional sonar. Some experts say that this kind of equipment can create distorted images of the seafloor, making natural slopes look like sharp, artificial lines. Since 2013, there's been a frustrating lack of new, high-resolution data made public. The Portuguese Navy's Hydrographic Institute did investigate and said the structure had been mapped before. Their conclusion, according to reports, was that it was likely a natural volcanic formation. But a detailed official report with clear sonar scans and photos has never been widely released. This has left everyone to rely on that first dramatic image and second-hand accounts. Most importantly, not a single piece of archaeological evidence has ever been recovered from the site itself. No tool marks, no pottery, no carvings. While supporters point to the pyramid's supposed alignment with the cardinal points, even that claim is based on the discoverer's data and hasn't been independently confirmed in a peer-reviewed study. Without that smoking gun proof of human hands at work, the man-made theory is just speculation. Even the controversial discoveries on the islands, like the supposed pre-Portuguese rock art, are still on the fringe of mainstream archaeology. While they're intriguing, many of these finds haven't been conclusively dated or accepted by the wider scientific community. So trying to connect unverified artifacts on land to an unverified structure underwater requires a bit of a leap. We're basically left in limbo. The mystery lives on, not because the evidence for a lost civilization is so strong, but because the definitive proof debunking it hasn't been shared with the public. This information vacuum has let speculation run wild and created a modern legend.
So what is the underwater pyramid of the Azores? The overwhelming weight of scientific evidence points to a natural cause. Its location in a hyperactive volcanic zone, the known history of the Di João de Castro Bank, and the fact that it's been underwater for 20,000 years make the case for a geological formation incredibly strong. The most likely answer is that we're looking at an unusually shaped volcanic cone, a monument to the powerful and sometimes bizarrely precise forces that shape our planet. And yet, the mystery won't die. The idea of its perfect geometry, its alignment with the cardinal points, and the thrilling possibility that our history books are missing a chapter are hard to shake. The pyramid taps into that deep desire to believe that we weren't the first, that there are incredible, forgotten stories buried beneath the waves. Until a fully equipped, transparent expedition sends back crystal-clear images and physical samples from the seafloor, the debate will rage on. Is it a volcano, or is it a tombstone for a civilization lost to time? For now, the underwater pyramid of the Azores remains a powerful symbol of the unexplored, a question mark drawn on the deep ocean map, daring us to find the answer.
The underwater Cyclopean walls of Japan. Who built these massive stones? Deep in the waters off the southern coast of Japan lies a mystery that challenges our understanding of the ancient world. It's a place of colossal stone structures, giant terraced platforms, and seemingly perfect right angles, all submerged beneath the ocean waves. For decades, this site has been at the center of a fierce debate, pitting mainstream science against theories of a long-lost advanced civilization. Is this simply a bizarre trick of nature, or are we looking at the ruins of a city that vanished into the sea thousands of years ago? This is the story of the Yonaguni Monument, a riddle written in stone waiting to be solved in the depths of the Pacific. Deep beneath the waves off the coast of Japan lies something that just shouldn't exist. A massive stone monolith featuring shapes and angles that look shockingly precise. Geologists argue that this is a stunning but entirely natural spectacle of rock and erosion. But others are utterly convinced that these are the remnants of a lost ancient city, a culture that vanished into the sea thousands of years before the Great Pyramids of Egypt were even a thought. So what is this underwater structure? And what is the truth hidden in the deep? The story of the Yonaguni Monument begins not with an archaeologist, but with a diver. In 1986, a man named Kihachiro Aratake, a local tourism operator, was scouting the waters off Yonaguni Island, looking for new spots to see hammerhead sharks. During one of these dives, he stumbled upon something that defied all explanation. He saw a vast, monolithic structure stretching out across the seabed. It was a colossal formation of stone, marked by immense, flat terraces, towering steps, and sharp, clean angles that seemed completely out of place in the natural world. The main structure he found was staggering. It measured roughly 100 meters long by 60 meters wide, and rose about 25 meters from the seafloor. It looked, for all the world, like a submerged pyramid. Word of Aratake's discovery spread like wildfire, capturing the imagination of divers, researchers, and mystery lovers across the globe. They all asked the same question: what was this thing? No one could be sure. The site, quickly dubbed the Yonaguni Monument, became an instant enigma. It was a playground for sharks and sea turtles, but its features whispered of a human story, of a time when this corner of the ocean might have been dry land. The discovery launched an investigation that continues to this day, an investigation into a mystery that could potentially rewrite a chapter of human history. As more researchers descended to explore the monument, one man became the leading voice for the theory of artificial creation, Professor Masaki Kimura, a marine geologist from Japan's University of the Ryukyus. After conducting over 100 dives at the site for more than 15 years, Kimura became convinced that the monument was not a natural formation. He argued that the sheer concentration of these unusual features in such a small area was just too improbable to be a coincidence. To him, this wasn't just a rock. It was a complex of man-made,
or at least man-altered structures. Kimura and his supporters point to what they see as undeniable evidence of human design. The main monument's most striking feature is its series of tiered platforms, which look like gigantic staircases or the sides of a step pyramid. The angles are often uncannily straight, with some appearing to be near-perfect 90-degree right angles. Proponents of this theory argue that natural erosion simply doesn't produce such geometric precision on this scale. Beyond the main monolith, Kimura identified other features he believes are artificial. He described what look like roads, a castle, monuments, and even a stadium, all connected by a system of what he interprets as channels or roadways. He also claims to have found smaller, more detailed evidence of human modification. This includes what appear to be post holes carved into the rock, suggesting wooden pillars were once inserted there. There are also features that have been interpreted as carvings. One particular formation, which Kimura dubbed the underwater Sphinx, he claims resembles an ancient Okinawan king. The most compelling part of this theory is the timeline. If the Yonaguni monument is man-made, it would have to be incredibly old. Proponents suggest it was built during the last ice age, around 10,000 years ago, when sea levels were much lower, and this area would have been above water. If true, this would make the monument more than twice as old as the Great Pyramid of Giza and Stonehenge, forcing us to radically reconsider the capabilities of prehistoric people. It would imply the existence of a sophisticated, unknown civilization in this part of the world, a culture with the technology to shape massive stone structures long before any known civilization in the region. Some, like author Graham Hancock, see this as evidence of a lost global civilization wiped out by a cataclysm at the end of the last ice age. Kimura himself has even suggested it could be a remnant of the legendary lost continent of Mu. The evidence for a man-made structure is tantalizing. It suggests a history far older and more mysterious than we ever imagined, a story of a lost world swallowed by the sea. Before we explore the other side of this incredible debate, if you're finding this mystery as fascinating as we do, take a moment to subscribe and hit that like button. It helps us bring more of these ancient enigmas to you. Just as there are passionate advocates for a man-made origin, there is an equally strong and more scientifically supported argument that the Yonaguni monument is a spectacular but entirely natural creation. The leading voice for this perspective is Dr. Robert Schoch, a geologist from Boston University who has dived the site extensively. After his own inspections, Schoch concluded that the monument is primarily a natural structure. The core of the geological argument lies in the rock itself. The monument is a single, solid mass of bedrock, not a collection of quarried and assembled blocks. It's composed of sandstone from a formation known as the Lower Miocene Yaeyama group, which dates back about 20 million years. This type of sandstone, Schoch explains, is defined by numerous parallel bedding planes, the natural layers of the rock. When this rock is stressed, it tends to break cleanly along these planes. On top of that, the region is a hotbed of seismic activity, located right near a tectonic fault line on the Pacific Ring of Fire. Geologists argue that millions of years of earthquakes have created sets of vertical fractures, or joints, throughout the sandstone. When these vertical joints intersect with the horizontal bedding planes, the rock naturally shears off into sharp, geometric, block-like shapes. The result? Features that look uncannily like steps, terraces, and flat walls. Schoch and other geologists point out that similar formations can be found on the dry land of Yonaguni Island itself. Skeptics of the man-made theory also challenge the so-called evidence of carving. The supposed post holes, they argue, are more likely potholes, formed by swirling water and pebbles grinding into the rock. The alleged carvings of faces or animals are dismissed as a classic case of pareidolia, our brain's tendency to see familiar patterns in random shapes. The roads are likely just natural channels in the rock, and the walls could simply be horizontal platforms that fell into a vertical position
when the rock beneath them eroded away. A major strike against the artificial origin theory is the complete lack of supporting archaeological evidence. Decades of exploration have failed to produce a single undisputed tool, pot, or artifact you would expect to find at a massive construction site. Proponents argue that powerful currents could have swept the site clean, but geologists counter that those same currents are more than capable of eroding the sandstone into the dramatic shapes we see today. The mainstream scientific consensus remains that while the Yonaguni Monument is a geological marvel, it was shaped by the predictable forces of nature, not by human hands. So, where does that leave us? On one side, we have an incredible story of an impossible ancient city, a Japanese Atlantis built by a lost civilization and swallowed by the rising seas of the Ice Age. This theory is fueled by the monument's breathtaking scale, its geometric appearance, and the tantalizing idea that our history books are missing a vital chapter. It's a narrative championed by researchers like Masaki Kimura, who, after hundreds of dives, remains convinced he's looking at the work of human hands, or at least a natural feature that was heavily modified by ancient people. On the other side stands the geological explanation, championed by scientists like Robert Schoch. This theory argues that the monument is a product of natural forces, the unique properties of sandstone combined with the relentless power of tectonic activity and ocean currents. This view is supported by the lack of definitive artifacts and the presence of similar geological formations nearby. It suggests that what we see isn't a lost city, but a stunning illusion crafted by the planet itself. Decades after its discovery, the debate over the Yonaguni Monument shows no signs of ending. It remains one of the world's most profound underwater mysteries. Is it a man-made structure that predates the pyramids, challenging everything we know about the ancient past? Or is it one of nature's most magnificent and deceptive creations? For now, the truth remains hidden in the deep, a silent stone enigma. The Lost City of Lion City. China's Atlantis with 1,300-year-old temples underwater. Some places on this earth hold deep secrets, places where the past isn't just a memory, it's physically present, waiting in the silent darkness. Beneath the calm, glassy surface of Chandao Lake in China lies one of these wonders. It's a place spoken of in whispers, often called China's Atlantis. But this isn't a myth. This is the true story of an ancient metropolis of stone and memory, hidden from the world for decades. A city with a story so unbelievable, it almost feels like fiction. Back in 1959, the Chinese government made a radical decision to flood a historic valley, drowning an ancient city to make way for a new dam. In doing so, they thought they were erasing it from the map. But what they actually did was create one of the most incredible time capsules in the world. Today, we're going 40 meters beneath the waves into this real-life Atlantis to explore the remarkably preserved streets, archways, and homes of a civilization frozen in time. This is the story of Seychelles, the magnificent Lion City. Before it became a submerged wonder, Seychelles was a thriving heart of Chinese civilization. While the city's story began over 1,000 years ago during the Tang Dynasty, around 621 AD, the stunning city that survives today is a masterpiece from the later Ming and Qing dynasties. For centuries, it was the region's political and cultural hub. Imagine a city bustling with life. Its streets, paved with flagstones and pebbles, were designed for a vibrant community. Seychelles wasn't just functional, it was a showcase of imperial architecture. Divers and historians have documented an incredible 265 archways, each one an intricate work of art. These aren't just simple arches, they're adorned with elaborate stone carvings of lions, dragons, and phoenixes, all symbols of power and fortune. Inscriptions found on the city walls date back to 1777,
giving us a direct link to the people who once walked these very streets. One of the city's oddest features was its layout. Most traditional Chinese cities had 4 gates, one for each cardinal direction. Xicheng had 5. It's a design choice that still puzzles historians, hinting at a unique cultural importance that we might never fully understand. The city walls themselves date back to the 16th century, a formidable site built during the city's golden age. This was a place of profound culture and a living monument to centuries of history.
Then, in 1959, the story took a dramatic turn. In an era of massive industrial ambition in China, the government launched the Shinan River Hydroelectric Dam project to power the growing nation. To do this, they needed a massive reservoir, and the valley where Xicheng stood for centuries was chosen as the basin. The decision was swift and final. The plan required flooding the entire valley, and this meant more than just submerging old buildings. It was a massive human displacement. Nearly 300,000 people were forced to relocate. These were families whose ancestors had lived in Xicheng and the nearby towns for generations. They had to leave everything behind: their homes, their businesses, and the graves of their ancestors. An entire culture, bound by centuries of shared history, was uprooted. As the dam was finished, the waters began to rise. Slowly at first, then relentlessly, the river crept up the stone walls, filled the streets, and poured through the ornate archways. The stone lions that had guarded the city for centuries watched silently as their world vanished. Within a year, Xicheng, along with another ancient town called Hicheng, disappeared completely beneath the surface of the new Qiandao Lake, or Thousand Island Lake. For decades, the magnificent lion city was effectively gone, a forgotten world sacrificed for progress. For over 40 years, Xicheng lay undisturbed in the cold, dark depths, a secret kept by the lake. Then, in 2001, the government sponsored an expedition to see what was left of the lost city. What the divers found was nothing short of miraculous. It wasn't a pile of rubble, it was a nearly intact city. So, how could a city this old survive so well? The very water that drowned it also saved it. Qiandao Lake is a freshwater body, without the corrosive salt of the ocean. Buried 40 meters deep, the city was shielded from the wind, rain, and sun that wear down surface structures. The cold, dark, low-oxygen environment also protected it from marine life that would normally devour wooden structures. The result is a city in a breathtaking state of preservation. Divers were amazed to find that not only had the stone architecture survived, but even some wooden beams and staircases were still intact. The detailed carvings on the archways looked almost as sharp as the day they were submerged. This accidental preservation created an unbelievable time capsule of imperial China. In 2011, Chinese National Geography published the first stunning photos and illustrations of the underwater city, and suddenly, the whole world learned about the haunting beauty of China's Atlantis. Today, exploring Lion City is the dive of a lifetime, but it's an adventure only for a select few. The site has been declared a protected historical relic, and access is strictly limited to experienced divers with specialized training. Descending into Qiandao Lake is like entering another world. Near the surface, visibility might be a decent 20 feet, but as you go deeper, the light fades. By the time you reach the city at 130 feet down, you're in near total darkness, with only the beams of powerful dive lights to guide you. The water is cold, often dropping into the 40s Fahrenheit. It's essentially a night dive, no matter the time of day. But the reward is unreal. Imagine floating through the silent streets of a forgotten metropolis. Your light catches a massive city gate, its stone guardians emerging from the gloom. You glide under an archway, its surface covered in the perfectly defined scales and claws of a dragon carved centuries ago. Majestic buildings appear out of the darkness, their scale and preservation almost impossible to believe. The city itself is huge, estimated to cover an area the size of 62 football fields. And while significant mapping has been done, its labyrinthine streets hold secrets yet to be uncovered, making every dive an act of discovery. The story of Xicheng is a great paradox.
It's a story of both destruction and preservation, of loss and rediscovery. The very act that doomed the city to a watery grave also saved it, protecting it from the modern world and keeping it safe for us to witness. This underwater kingdom is more than just an archaeological marvel. It's a memorial to the 300,000 people who lost their homes, their history submerged but not forgotten. It's a powerful reminder that even when a civilization disappears from sight, its legacy can survive in the most unexpected ways. Deep beneath Chandao Lake, the stone lions continue their silent watch over a city frozen in 1959, holding centuries of stories in the dark, still water. So much of Lion City has still never been seen by human eyes since it was flooded. Its deepest secrets are still waiting.
The underwater megalithic complex in the Straits of Gibraltar. Was this Atlantis? For thousands of years, the story of Atlantis has been dismissed as a myth. It's a fantastic tale of a lost city, an advanced civilization that vanished into the sea in a single, terrible day and night. But what if the man who first told us this story, the Greek philosopher Plato, left us a map? He gave one very specific, very tantalizing clue: that Atlantis was located in front of the mouth which you Greeks call the Pillars of Heracles. Today, we know these pillars as the Strait of Gibraltar, the narrow gateway between the Mediterranean and the Atlantic. For centuries, people have looked everywhere for Atlantis. But what if the answer was hiding in plain sight? Just miles from these ancient pillars, in the waters and marshlands of southern Spain, a private research group has made a sensational claim. They've found something incredible. They describe mysterious, massive structures deep beneath the waves and the mud. These aren't random, they say. Some even claim they align with the stars. The question is no longer if something is down there, but what is it? To understand just how big these claims are, we have to go back to the source, Plato. Around 360 BC, he described a mighty naval power that existed 9,000 years before his time. This was the empire of Atlantis. He painted a picture of an island of almost unimaginable wealth. At its heart was a stunning capital city, built in concentric rings of land and water, a marvel of engineering. At its center stood a grand temple to the sea god Poseidon, gleaming with gold, silver, and a mysterious fiery metal called orichalcum. Plato described a civilization that had mastered engineering and seafaring on a scale that was completely unrivaled. But this paradise wasn't meant to last. According to the legend, the people of Atlantis grew arrogant. Their pride led them to wage war against Athens, and in doing so, they angered the gods. The punishment was swift and total. Plato wrote of violent earthquakes and floods, and in a single day and night, the island of Atlantis disappeared into the sea. It's a cautionary tale about a civilization that reached for the heavens only to be cast into the abyss. And for most of history, that's all it was, a story. Now let's fast forward 2 millennia. The hunt for Atlantis has inspired theories that place it everywhere from the Caribbean to Antarctica. But the most persistent ideas have always circled back to Plato's main clue, the Pillars of Hercules. In recent years, a private UK-based company called Merlin Burrows made a stunning announcement. They claim they've found Atlantis, right where Plato said it would be, in and around Spain's Doñana National Park, an area that was once a vast inland sea. Using satellite imagery and underwater surveys, these teams have identified what they describe as the clear remnants of ancient cities buried under mud and sand. They report finding huge submerged circular and rectangular features, claiming to have found what looks like enormous ancient harbor walls and a series of island-like structures, a layout eerily similar to Plato's description. Their narrative is that a huge coastal civilization was wiped out by a massive tsunami, the kind known to happen in this region, burying everything under a thick layer of sediment. So what have they actually found? Proponents of this theory point to sonar scans that appear to show massive man-made walls and foundations. A filmmaker documenting the work described how a major storm seemingly scoured away layers of sand, revealing what he identified as walls nearly 8 meters tall. But the most provocative claims, which remain entirely unverified by mainstream science, come from samples allegedly taken from the site. According to a materials analysis commissioned by the company, these samples show a type of ancient cement unlike anything known from Greek or Roman times, supposedly dating back 10,000 to 12,000 years. The research group argues this is evidence of the lost advanced civilization Plato wrote about. Adding to the mystery is a strange greenish-blue coating found on some of the alleged ruins. Proponents have speculatively linked this to orichalcum, the mythical metal Plato described. Of course, this is a dramatic leap. These are explosive ideas, but they all hinge on one very big if, whether any of it can be independently verified.
The claims don't stop there. Some of the private researchers involved have proposed that the layout of this alleged complex isn't accidental, but part of a grand celestial design. The theory suggests the main structures are deliberately aligned with constellations or events like the solstices. This idea of a celestial blueprint isn't unique. We see it in theories about the pyramids of Giza aligning with Orion's belt and Stonehenge's solar calendar. Finding such alignments here would imply a sophisticated knowledge of astronomy and engineering, hallmarks of Plato's advanced civilization. This adds another layer of profound mystery, suggesting the builders saw their world as a reflection of the cosmos. It's a powerful and compelling idea, but just like the other claims, it remains entirely speculative and has not been backed up by any credible, peer-reviewed evidence. With such extraordinary claims, it's vital to ask, what does mainstream science say? This is where the story of a discovered Atlantis runs into a wall of solid skepticism. Mainstream archaeologists and geologists remain deeply unconvinced, and for good reason. First, geologists argue that many of the features identified as ruins are likely natural formations. The Gulf of Cadiz is an incredibly active and complex geological zone, sitting at the boundary of the African and Eurasian tectonic plates. It is known for features like mud volcanoes and shifting sediments that can naturally create linear and circular patterns that look artificial. Second, and perhaps most damning, is the age of the seafloor itself. Geological data suggests that much of this area has been continuously underwater for hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years. For a civilization to have built a city here 12,000 years ago, the land would have had to be above sea level, which the evidence just doesn't support. Finally, and crucially, the research from groups like Merlin Burroughs has not been published in peer-reviewed scientific journals, the standard process for vetting major discoveries. In fact, some of their alleged discoveries have been publicly debunked. Circular features they identified as ancient structures were found to be the remains of modern agricultural experiments from 2004. The overwhelming consensus among archaeologists is that Plato's Atlantis was a philosophical allegory, a fictional story he created to make a point about the dangers of national pride. So, where does that leave us? We have two powerful competing narratives. On one hand, a group of private researchers believes they've found physical evidence of Atlantis, presenting sonar scans and unverified material samples. Their narrative is one of a forgotten chapter of human history, swallowed by the sea. On the other hand, we have the consensus of mainstream geology and archaeology, which provides logical, natural explanations for these same findings. They see not a lost city, but a fascinating and dynamic geological landscape, and argue that seeing Atlantis here is simply imposing a myth onto nature. Could a real catastrophe have inspired the legend? It's possible. Some researchers have proposed that the story could be a distant cultural memory of actual land lost to rising seas at the end of the last ice age. The submerged island of Spartel Bank, also in the Strait of Gibraltar, is one candidate for this kind of inspiration. A real island that sank beneath the waves around 12,000 years ago.
Perhaps Atlantis isn't one place, but a story woven from the memory of many coastal settlements lost to the sea. Ultimately, definitive proof of Atlantis in the Straits of Gibraltar remains tantalizingly out of reach, buried under deep water, and even deeper layers of skepticism and time. The story holds a mirror to our own desires, the wish for a grander past, and the hope that we haven't lost some vital piece of wisdom along the way. Whether it's the ruins of an advanced civilization or a stunning geological marvel, what lies beneath the waves at the Pillars of Hercules continues to challenge our understanding of the ancient world. What do you think? Are these the ruins of Atlantis? A memory of a real catastrophe? Or a fantastic tale brought to life by natural geology? The sunken Stonehenge of the Pacific. Mysterious circle found near Samoa. Imagine a massive human-made structure, a kind of sunken Stonehenge, discovered at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. It's a story that sounds like it's been pulled straight from a movie, and it has absolutely captivated millions online. You've probably seen the images, perfectly arranged megaliths, lost to the depths for millennia, hinting at some forgotten chapter of human history. The find is presented as the ultimate proof of an advanced, unknown civilization that was swallowed by the sea. But here's the thing, is any of it true? Archaeologists and geologists are telling a very different story. So in this video, we're going to separate the facts from the fiction. We'll show you what they really found in the waters near Samoa, and then explore the genuine megalithic wonders of the Pacific, ancient marvels that are honestly far more incredible than any myth. The viral story of a submerged stone circle near Samoa is a powerful one, but it has one giant flaw. There's no actual archaeological evidence to back it up. Not one bit. Major institutions and scientific surveys have found no record of any deep-water, Stonehenge-like structure. The images that usually go with these claims are almost always CGI, artistic renderings, or just misidentified natural rock formations. You have to remember, the ocean floor is a geologically wild place, full of volcanic activity that can create some bizarre and seemingly artificial shapes. For instance, columns of basalt rock can naturally crack into hexagonal pillars that, to an untrained eye, look convincingly man-made. So if there's no sunken Stonehenge, does that mean Samoa has no ancient mysteries? Not at all. In fact, the myth distracts from the country's very real and seriously impressive archaeological heritage. On land, Samoa is home to monumental stone constructions that tell a fascinating story of a complex society. The most famous of these is the Pulimalei Mound, the largest single ancient structure in all of Polynesia. It's a massive stepped pyramid built from local volcanic stone, which got its start as a huge platform around 700 to 900 years ago. This wasn't a tomb, but a ceremonial hub, the very heart of a large settlement that once thrived on the island of Baiae. And that's not all. Alongside Pulimalei are hundreds of other features, including the mysterious star mounds. These are raised stone platforms with arms radiating outwards, giving them a star-like shape from above. Recent LiDAR scans, which use lasers to map the ground right through the dense jungle, have revealed over 80 of these structures. It's a discovery that hints at a population and level of organization far greater than anyone had understood. These weren't just decorations, they were centers for chiefly rituals, political gatherings, and even the high-status sport of pigeon snaring. The real story of Samoa's megaliths isn't about a lost city beneath the waves. It's about a vibrant, powerful society that shaped its own landscape, building monuments that served as the political and spiritual centers of their world. The mystery isn't if they built incredible things, but how and why these very real structures came to be. So, while the Samoan Stonehenge might be a myth, the Pacific is packed with real megalithic wonders that are even more fascinating. These sites don't need any exaggeration to be astounding. They're monuments to human ingenuity and ambition that challenge everything we think we know about the ancient world. If you're as fascinated by these true stories from archaeology as we are, take a moment to subscribe. We're all about uncovering the facts behind the world's greatest mysteries. Now, let's get to our first genuine megalithic wonder of the Pacific. Imagine a city built not on solid ground, but on a coral reef. That is Nan Madol. Located off the island of Ponape in Micronesia, it's the only ancient city ever constructed right on top of a reef. For centuries, it was the political and religious capital of the Sodalur dynasty, a line of powerful kings who showed up around the year 1200 and united the island's 25,000 people. Nan Madol means within the intervals, which refers to the network of canals that acted as its streets. The city is made of 92 artificial islets, built by stacking massive, naturally formed columns of basalt rock in a crisscross pattern on the shallow reef. These walls stand up to 15 meters high and 5 meters thick, forming tombs, homes, and ceremonial centers. The sheer scale of it all is just staggering. Archaeologists estimate that building Nan Madol required millions of tons of basalt, and this stone wasn't just lying around, it had to be quarried from the other side of Ponape and somehow moved to the reef. The question that still baffles researchers is how? How did a society with no wheels, no pulleys, and no metal tools quarry and transport stones weighing up to 50 tons and then expertly place them on a coral reef to create a floating city? Pohnpeian oral history has a simple answer: magic. Legend says the first two Sodalur rulers were sorcerers who used their powers to make the stones fly into place. While archaeologists are busy looking for a more scientific explanation, probably involving rafts, levers, and an incredible amount of manpower, the legend itself tells you just how awe-inspiring the site was. Nan Madol was designed to be separate, to be imposing. The ruling class lived in isolation on these islets, protected by water and monumental walls, their power reflected in the unbelievable architecture they commanded into existence. The city was eventually abandoned around 1628, but its stone walls remain, a silent, incredible testament to one of the most ambitious engineering projects in human history. Our next marvel takes us to the islands of Yap, also in Micronesia, where we find one of the most unique forms of currency ever created, massive stone discs called rye. Now, these aren't coins you can fit in your pocket. Rye stones are limestone wheels with a hole in the center, and they can be enormous. The largest one is over 11 feet across and weighs more than a car. But here's the craziest part. The limestone needed to make rye doesn't even exist on Yap. To create their money, the Yapese people had to set out on a dangerous 400-kilometer ocean voyage in outrigger canoes to the island of Palau. There, they would quarry the stone, carve it into a disc, and then start the treacherous journey home, towing the massive stone behind them on a raft. Many stones were lost to storms, which only made the ones that survived even more valuable. See, a rye stone's value wasn't just about its size, it was about its story. A stone's worth was tied to how difficult its journey was, how many lives were lost bringing it home, and who had owned it before. Because of this, the stones themselves almost never moved. When a stone was used in a major transaction, like a marriage dowry or settling a dispute, ownership was simply transferred with a public announcement. The physical stone might stay right where it was, but everyone in the community knew who the new owner was. In a way, the Yapese created a public ledger, a system based entirely on collective memory and social agreement. There's a famous story about a rye stone that was being transported when it sank to the bottom of the ocean. Even though it was lost forever, it was still considered valid currency. Its ownership continued to be traded because everyone agreed that it existed and they all knew its history. It's a powerful reminder that money, at its core, is just a shared belief. While the Yapese stopped making rye in the early 20th century, the stones remain powerful cultural symbols, tangible links to an ancestral past built on courage, risk, and trust. Of course, we have to talk about the Moai of Rapa Nui or Easter Island. But to really get what these iconic statues are all about, we have to look past the wild myths of alien visitors and appreciate them for what they are, the crowning achievement of one of the most isolated groups of people on Earth. The people who settled Rapa Nui were master navigators, part of the great Polynesian expansion that saw humans cross thousands of miles of open ocean in canoes, using only the stars, currents, and birds to guide them. Between 1250 and 1500, the Rapa Nui people carved nearly 900 of these monolithic figures from the island's volcanic rock. These statues, which are whole bodies and not just heads, are believed to be the living faces of godlike ancestors. Their job was to watch over the villages and project spiritual power, or mana, to protect their descendants and bring good fortune. That's why almost all the moai you see on their stone platforms or ahu face inland, with their backs to the sea, keeping a silent vigil over their clan's land. The engineering involved was incredible. After carving a statue in the Rano Raraku quarry, teams of people had to move these multi-ton figures for miles across the island's rolling hills. While we still debate the exact method, evidence suggests they were walked upright by rocking them back and forth with ropes, a process that would have required insane coordination and skill. Competition between clans to build bigger and more impressive statues fueled their creation, becoming a central focus of the island's culture. The moai aren't a sign of collapse. They're a symbol of a thriving, organized, and deeply spiritual society, making its mark on the most remote inhabited place on the planet. So we go from a mythical stone circle at the bottom of the sea to the very real marvels of Nan Madol, the stone money of Yap, and the watchful moai of Rapa Nui. The Pacific Ocean truly is a theater of human achievement. The viral story of a Samoan Stonehenge is tempting because it hints at a great lost mystery. But as we've seen, the truth is often far more compelling than fiction. The real wonders of the Pacific don't need any embellishment. They tell the true story of navigators who conquered the largest ocean on Earth, of engineers who built cities on reefs, and of societies who created a currency from courage and a legacy from stone. The real mystery isn't what's lost beneath the waves, but what we can still learn from the incredible achievements left standing in the sun. The underwater ruins of Port Royal, the wickedest city on Earth, swallowed in 4 minutes. In the 17th century, there was a city known as both the richest and the wickedest place on Earth. It was a pirate's paradise, where it was said that 1 in every 4 buildings was either a bar or a brothel. But on the morning of June 7, 1692, this city of sin was swallowed by the sea in a terrifying earthquake. What it left behind is a perfectly preserved underwater city, a real-life pirate time capsule. Back in the mid-1600s, the Caribbean was a battleground for European empires, and Spain was the king of the sandbox. England had just snatched Jamaica from them in 1655, giving them a foothold in the region, but they didn't have the military power to defend it. The Spanish were constantly trying to take it back, so Jamaica's governors had to get creative. They decided to make a deal with the devil, the Buccaneers, also known as the Brethren of the Coast. It was a brilliant, if risky, move. The governor of Jamaica basically rolled out the welcome mat for pirates and privateers, inviting them to make Port Royal their home base. He gave them letters of marque, official government paperwork that made it legal for them to attack Spanish ships. It was a win-win. The pirates got a safe place to sell their loot and party, and England got a ferocious, unofficial navy that kept the Spanish too busy to invade. Almost overnight, Port Royal exploded. It went from a tiny fort to the most important English trading hub in the Americas. The city was crawling with merchants, craftsmen, and fortune seekers. Streets were lined with fancy brick buildings, and its population of 6,500 was as big as Boston's at the time. The city ran on a wild business model. Pirates would steal gold from the Spanish, bring it to Port Royal, and the merchants there would sell it right back to other Spanish colonies. This cycle didn't just make Port Royal a pirate town, it made it the economic engine of the Caribbean. The city's reputation for sin grew even faster than its wealth. It was called the Sodom of the New World, and it earned that nickname.
It was a place of wild excess. In 1 month alone, the city issued 40 new licenses for taverns. It was a chaotic mix of legitimate businessmen and thousands of pirates with money to burn. Gold, silver, and jewels plundered from Spanish ships flowed through the city's taverns. Fresh off a raid, a pirate would swagger in, pockets overflowing with coins, and blow it all on rum, gambling, and women. One writer at the time, Charles Leslie, noted that wine and women drained their wealth to such a degree that some of them became reduced to beggary. This was the world of legends like Calico Jack and Blackbeard. But the biggest name in Port Royal was Sir Henry Morgan. Morgan was a Welsh privateer who led devastatingly successful raids against Spanish cities. His raid on Panama City in 1671 was so massive, it took 150 mules just to carry the treasure. He became a hero, got incredibly rich, and in a wild twist of irony was eventually knighted and made the lieutenant governor of Jamaica. The man who was the face of Port Royal's lawlessness was now in charge of hunting down other pirates. His story is Port Royal's story, a city built on state-sponsored violence, raw capitalism, and a thin layer of respectability. The morning of June 7, 1692, started out bright and calm, but just before noon, the world came to an end. A massive earthquake, estimated today as a 7.5 magnitude, ripped through the island. The ground didn't just shake, it rolled in waves. You see, Port Royal's greatest weakness was its foundation. The whole city, with all its heavy brick buildings, was built on a narrow strip of loose, wet sand. When the quake hit, it triggered something terrifying called liquefaction. Basically, the shaking turned the solid ground into a thick, watery sludge, like quicksand. In an instant, the earth lost all its strength. Buildings, streets, and people were literally swallowed whole. The local church rector, Edmund Heath, wrote that he saw the earth open and swallow up a multitude of people. Fissures opened and closed, crushing people, while others sank into the mud, some buried with only their heads sticking out. Entire streets slid directly into the harbor. The city's forts, built for defense, crumbled into the sea. And then came the tsunami. A massive wave rose out of the harbor, so powerful that it lifted a warship, the HMS Swan, and carried it over the rooftops of the sinking buildings before dropping it in the middle of the town. In just 4 minutes, it was all over. 2/3 of the city, about 33 acres, had vanished beneath the waves, taking an estimated 2,000 people with it. The richest, wickedest city in the New World was gone. The aftermath was pure chaos. Survivors clung to floating wreckage while looters picked through the ruins, but the dying wasn't over. In the weeks that followed, another 2,000 to 3,000 people died from injuries and disease. To many at the time, it felt like divine punishment, God finally smiting the city for its sins. For centuries, Port Royal lay quiet, its streets submerged under 40 feet of water. But this catastrophe created an archaeological miracle. The low oxygen environment of the seafloor preserved the city in stunning detail, creating a Caribbean Pompeii. Starting in the 1980s, archaeologists from Texas A&M University and the Jamaica National Heritage Trust began to uncover its secrets. The discoveries were stunning. They found entire buildings intact, filled with artifacts that told the story of a city frozen in time. They found stacks of plates just as they had fallen off a shelf, and skillets still sitting in fireplaces. But the most famous discovery of all was a simple brass pocket watch, recovered from the silt. Its hands were stopped at 11:43 a.m., believed to mark the exact moment the world fell apart. They also found the remains of those who died, including children, trapped beneath collapsed walls, a heartbreaking reminder of the human cost. Today, the site of historic Port Royal is a sleepy fishing village. The underwater city is a protected archaeological site, mostly off limits to preserve its fragile remains. While major digs have ended,
the work now focuses on protecting the site from new threats like coastal erosion and climate change. Many of the incredible artifacts pulled from the sea are now on display in museums in Kingston, Jamaica. Because of its incredible historical value, the sunken city is on UNESCO's tentative list to become a World Heritage Site, a designation that would help protect it for generations to come. The story of Port Royal is a powerful mix of pirate legends, colonial greed, and the awesome power of nature. It's a reminder of a city that lived fast and died in an instant, only to be reborn as a perfectly preserved time capsule from the golden age of piracy. The sunken city of Neapolis, 1600-year-old Roman city discovered off Tunisia. In the year 365 AD, the world shook. An earthquake, with an estimated magnitude of 8.0 or more, ripped through the earth near the island of Crete. It unleashed a terrifying tsunami that slammed the Mediterranean coastline, a day of horror that flattened cities and devastated communities from Egypt all the way to modern-day Tunisia. One of the Roman Empire's bustling coastal hubs, a city named Neapolis, was simply struck from the map, vanishing beneath the waves. For over 1600 years, it was little more than a ghost story. But what if the legend was real? What if a city, frozen in its final terrifying moments, was just waiting to be found? Well, after centuries of silence, the lost city of Neapolis has been discovered. For centuries, Neapolis was a historical puzzle. While cities like Pompeii were buried in ash and famously documented, Neapolis just disappeared. Roman historians were strangely quiet about it, and some scholars have a theory as to why. Generations earlier, during the brutal Punic Wars, Neapolis had made a risky bet. It sided with Carthage against Rome. This defiance might have led to the city being snubbed, its history largely sidelined in official Roman records, even after it became a Roman colony. The most significant clue to its fate comes from the Roman historian Ammianus Marcellinus, who described the apocalyptic tsunami of July 21st, 365 AD. He wrote of ships being thrown miles inland, and of the sea swallowing cities whole. While his surviving texts don't mention Neapolis by name, his account of the disaster perfectly matched the city's suspected demise. For archaeologists, it was a crucial breadcrumb. It suggested that somewhere off the coast of Naboul, in modern Tunisia, the ruins of a once great city lay hidden under the water. But for more than 1600 years, that's all it was, a story. To understand what happened to Neapolis, we have to go back to that horrifying day. The earthquake near Crete was so powerful it literally lifted parts of the island by up to 10 meters. This violent upheaval of the seafloor created a massive wave that radiated across the Mediterranean. It wasn't just one wave, but a series of them, arriving without warning. In Alexandria, Egypt, the sea pulled back, exposing the harbor floor and stranding ships in the mud. Then, it came roaring back, crashing over city walls and leaving a trail of death and destruction. The same nightmare unfolded on the coasts of Greece, Italy, and North Africa. Ammianus Marcellinus called it a day when the solid fabric of the earth was trembling and shaking. For Neapolis, a city whose lifeblood was the sea, this was a death blow. The tsunami would have annihilated its port, its factories, and its homes with unstoppable force. Buildings would have been torn from their foundations, and the entire city submerged in minutes. The city that had stood for centuries was erased from the map in a single day, its ruins sinking beneath the waves. The disaster left such a scar on the Roman psyche that some later writers saw it as a divine omen of the empire's own coming decline. Before the catastrophe, Neapolis was a gem of Roman Africa. It was wealthy, sophisticated, and a major commercial hub, and its fame and fortune were built on something pungent, a product that was a staple in every Roman kitchen and a luxury good across the empire: garum. Garum was a fermented fish sauce. Think of it as the Roman version of ketchup or soy sauce, but way more intense. It was made by packing fish, guts, blood, and all, into huge vats with salt and letting them ferment under the hot Mediterranean sun for months.
The funky, savory liquid that was drained off was garum. It might not sound tasty to us, but Romans put it on everything. The highest quality garum could sell for prices that rivaled fine perfume. And Neapolis, it turns out, was a garum superpower. This was long suspected, but the discovery of the sunken ruins proved it. As lead archaeologist Munir Fantar said, the find established with certainty that Neapolis was a major center for the manufacture of garum and salt fish, probably the largest center in the Roman world. The scale of the operation was staggering. Archaeologists found around 100 massive tanks used for fermentation. This industrial-scale production would have made the city's elite incredibly rich. We can see their wealth in the ruins found on land, opulent villas decorated with stunning, detailed mosaics, now housed in the Naboul Museum. These artworks paint a picture of a cultured and prosperous society, all funded by smelly fish sauce. So how do you find a city that no one has seen since antiquity? The search began in 2010, when a joint Tunisian-Italian archaeological team, led by Munir Fantar of Tunisia's National Heritage Institute, set out to find the lost city. They focused their efforts in the Gulf of Hammamet, off the coast of the modern city of Naboul, which was built partially over the ancient settlement. For years they struggled. Underwater archaeology is incredibly difficult. Divers have to deal with poor visibility, shifting sands, and the constant pressure of the water. For 7 long years, the ruins remained elusive, its secrets kept by the same sea that had claimed it. Then, in the summer of 2017, the team got a break. The weather conditions became exceptionally favorable. Unusually calm seas gave the divers and their equipment the perfect window they needed. As they scanned a huge area of the seabed, the ghostly outlines of man-made structures began to emerge from the murky depths. It wasn't just a few scattered stones, it was a city. The site was immense, covering more than 20 hectares, or about 50 acres. As they explored this underwater world, they could make out paved streets, the foundations of monuments, and the outlines of buildings. It was a snapshot of a Roman city, frozen at the very moment of its destruction. And then they found the smoking gun, the garum factories. There, preserved on the seafloor, were the 100 large vats that confirmed the stories of Neapolis's economic might. Munir Fantar called it a major discovery, one that finally provided hard evidence for the historical accounts of the city's sudden disappearance. The discovery of Neapolis is about more than just finding lost ruins. It's about recovering a lost piece of history. The site gives us an incredible window into Roman urban life, sealed away by a single, catastrophic event. First, the ruins are stark, physical proof of the 365 AD tsunami and its devastating power. The submerged streets of Neapolis are a haunting memorial to one of the ancient world's worst natural disasters. Second, the discovery changes our understanding of the Roman economy. We knew garum was important, but the industrial scale of the facilities at Neapolis is astonishing. It suggests the city was likely the single largest producer of this vital commodity in the Roman Empire. The city's incredible wealth is showcased by artifacts like the mosaics from the House of the Nymphs, which are now displayed at the Naboul Museum. Finally, the story of Neapolis is a powerful reminder. It's a case study in how vulnerable coastal societies are to the forces of nature. As scientists study the seismic faults in the Mediterranean, some have estimated that an earthquake like the one in 365 AD could occur in the region roughly every 800 years, making the fate of Neapolis a chilling lesson from the past. For 1,600 years, Neapolis was a ghost, a city erased by the sea, its memory fading into legend. Today, it has been brought back to life. Its rediscovery is a triumph of modern archaeology and a testament to a team that refused to give up. The sunken streets of Neapolis tell a dramatic story of life, wealth, and sudden destruction. As archaeologists continue to explore this incredible underwater time capsule, who knows what other secrets they will bring to the surface.
The lost city has been found, but its story is still being told. The underwater megaliths of Malta. Were ancient temples built before the flood? Scattered across the tiny Mediterranean island of Malta are ancient stone giants, massive, sprawling temple complexes that are older than Stonehenge and the Great Pyramids of Giza. For decades, the official story has seemed as solid as the temples themselves. They were built by a clever, isolated community of farmers around 5,600 years ago, a masterpiece of the Stone Age. But what if that story is missing a key chapter? What if history has it wrong? And what if the biggest secrets of Malta's master builders aren't on the island's windswept hills, but hidden beneath the waves? Just off the coast, submerged and forgotten, lies a strange formation. Some claim it's another temple, one that could rewrite everything we think we know about our past. It's a discovery that hints at a much older, more mysterious origin for Malta's stone architects, a story that connects these temples to a lost world and a global cataclysm that drowned a civilization. Before we get into the underwater mystery, you have to understand just how incredible the temples on land are. They're UNESCO World Heritage Sites, and for good reason. Structures like Gigantia, Hagar Kim, and Menidra are true architectural marvels. The name Gigantia actually means Giant's Tower, because for centuries, local people figured only a race of giants could have moved the colossal limestone blocks, some weighing up to 20 tons. The official timeline places their construction between 3,600 and 2,500 BC. For a long time, they were considered the oldest freestanding stone buildings on the planet, until the discovery of even older sites like Göbekli Tepe in Turkey changed our understanding of the ancient world. Still, think about it. These weren't simple huts. They were complex, multi-room structures with paved floors and doorways carved from enormous slabs of rock, all engineered without the wheel or metal tools. Inside, archaeologists found intricate spiral carvings, altars for animal sacrifice, and the now famous Fat Lady figurines, statues that many believe represent fertility or a mother goddess, though their true meaning is still debated. The accepted story, backed by decades of research and radiocarbon dating, is that these were built by a flourishing Stone Age culture. They were humanity's first great architects, a brilliant spiritual people. But according to mainstream history, their world was limited to this small island. They were a magnificent but ultimately local phenomenon. That's the story you'll find in the textbooks. But it's a story being challenged by a claim made just a couple of kilometers off the coast.
And this is where the official history gets murky. In 1999, an alternative historian named Hubert Zeidelmeier, following a tip from local divers, began investigating a submerged location off the coast. What he claimed to have found there has since sparked a fierce debate on the fringes of archaeology. He called the site Jebel Jol Bahar, Maltese for stones on the sea floor. Lying on an underwater plateau about 19 meters down, Zeidelmeier described what he was convinced were the ruins of another megalithic temple. He reported seeing large stones arranged in what looked like circles, with defined rooms and an avenue leading to an entrance, a layout eerily similar to the temples on land. He even noted tracks on the seabed that reminded him of the famous cart ruts found elsewhere on Malta. If this site were proven to be a man-made temple, it would throw the entire timeline into chaos. Why? Because the last time that piece of land was above water was before the end of the last ice age, over 10,000 years ago. The implication is staggering. The tradition of building giant stone temples in Malta wouldn't be 5,600 years old, but more than twice that, pushing its origins deep into the Ice Age. It would mean a sophisticated culture existed here before the great floods that reshaped the ancient world.
Hubert Zeidelmeier was certain he had found the Mother Temple, the origin point of Malta's entire megalithic culture, built by a lost civilization and drowned by the rising seas. He tied his find to the great flood myths found all over the world, from the Epic of Gilgamesh to the story of Noah. But the professional archaeological community was, and still is, deeply skeptical. To this day, Maltese authorities and mainstream archaeologists have never officially confirmed that Jebel Jol Bahar is a prehistoric temple. No formal, peer-reviewed studies have ever been published. In fact, many divers who have visited the site have shot down the claims, suggesting the boulders are nothing more than modern construction debris that was illegally dumped. So, is it a lost temple or just a pile of trash? Right now, the site exists in a kind of archaeological limbo, a tantalizing possibility for some, an unproven claim for others. This us versus them narrative is common in the world of ancient mysteries. You have independent researchers arguing for a total rewrite of history, and you have mainstream science demanding hard, verifiable proof. The core of the problem is a lack of official investigation. Until the site is properly surveyed by accredited marine archaeologists, it will remain a potent question mark floating just off Malta's coast.
The idea of a sunken temple off Malta doesn't exist in a bubble. It plugs right into a much bigger, more controversial theory about a lost, advanced civilization of the Ice Age, a theory most famously pushed by author Graham Hancock. In his work, Hancock argues that clues scattered across the globe all point to a single forgotten chapter in human history. The theory focuses on a period of wild climate change called the Younger Dryas, which started around 12,800 years ago. Proponents suggest a cataclysm, maybe a comet impact, triggered a rapid meltdown of the ice sheets, causing sea levels to rise dramatically. Coastlines all over the world were swallowed by the ocean, and any advanced maritime cultures that lived along them would have been erased, their cities and monuments lost beneath the waves. When you look at Malta through this lens, the official story starts to feel shaky. During the last ice age, sea levels were more than 100 meters lower. Malta wasn't an island at all. It was the highest point of a land bridge that connected it to Sicily and mainland Europe. As the ice melted and the water rose, that land bridge was slowly flooded, forcing people to higher and higher ground, until only the islands we know today were left. Could the builders of the supposed underwater temple have been the survivors of this catastrophe? And could the famous temples on land be their descendants' attempt to rebuild their lost world? This controversial idea makes you look at the temples on land differently. What if they aren't the beginning of a story, but the end of one? Some researchers argue the temples themselves hold clues to a much deeper past, especially when it comes to astronomy. The Manidra Temple, for instance, is famous for its precise alignments to the solstices and equinoxes, proving its builders had a deep understanding of the sun. But alternative theories go even further, proposing alignments to stars that would have only been in the right position thousands of years earlier. These ideas, while not accepted by mainstream science, suggest a legacy of knowledge passed down from a much earlier time. What is certain is that the temple builders' astronomical knowledge was incredibly advanced. They created calendars in stone and oriented their sacred spaces to the heavens. Mainstream research agrees that this knowledge was vital for a Neolithic people who depended on both farming and seafaring. The question is, did they invent all of it themselves in just a few centuries, or was it a legacy of wisdom inherited from an even older maritime culture? So we're left with two very different stories. The first is the mainstream account, a brilliant Neolithic people who on their own developed the world's first great stone architecture between 3600 and 2500 BC. Their astronomical knowledge was impressive, but developed locally to serve their needs. The second is the alternative theory. A much older, Ice Age civilization thrived on the landmass that is now Malta. When the Great Flood came, the survivors retreated to the high ground, and over thousands of years, they continued their traditions, which resulted in the temples we see today, monuments that are merely echoes of a forgotten golden age. This theory challenges the very foundation of our historical timeline. The resistance from mainstream archaeology is understandable. Science runs on evidence, and the evidence for the Neolithic timeline is solid, based on decades of fieldwork and dating. The alternative theory,
while fascinating, is built on reinterpreting myths, circumstantial evidence, and unverified underwater sites. But the questions won't go away. Why the apparent lack of official interest in investigating Gabel Gol Bahar? While there is no accepted evidence of human settlement in Malta during the Ice Age, shouldn't every possibility be explored? Malta remains an enigma, its secrets locked in stone and shrouded by water. The temples on its hills are, without a doubt, some of the most important ancient sites on Earth, a testament to a people with extraordinary skill. But the claims of what lies just offshore, in the silent depths, suggest the story we know may only be one chapter in a much longer book. Until the day Jebel Jal Bahar is properly explored, the question will remain. Were Malta's ancient temples built by the first farmers? Or are they the last relics of a world that disappeared beneath the waves at the dawn of our age? The answer is still out there. The sunken monuments of the Seychelles. Could this be a remnant of a drowned continent? We all love stories about cities swallowed by the sea, ancient civilizations lost to time, and mysteries that could rewrite history. Tales of Atlantis, of Lemuria, of entire continents vanishing beneath the waves, taking all their secrets with them. But what if the clues to one of these lost worlds weren't buried in crumbling ancient texts? What if they were hiding in plain sight, in a place most of us only know as a sun-drenched paradise? The Seychelles, an archipelago of 115 islands scattered across the Indian Ocean, a name that brings to mind perfect beaches and turquoise water. But what if I told you that beneath those idyllic waves lies a secret? Strange stone formations, arranged with a symmetry that seems to whisper of design. Formations that have led some to believe they aren't the work of geology, but of hands from a long-lost civilization. We're exploring one of the ocean's most captivating enigmas. Are these peculiar structures just a trick of nature? Or could they be the last remnants of a continent swallowed by the sea? To understand the mystery of the Seychelles, we have to go way back. Not just a few thousand years, but hundreds of millions. Before humans, our planet's land was welded together into one supercontinent, Gondwana. Around 167 million years ago, this colossal landmass started to crack apart. Africa and South America drifted away from each other. Antarctica and Australia went their own way, and a huge piece carrying modern-day India and Madagascar began its own slow-motion journey. Caught in this epic continental breakup was a small sliver of land, a microcontinent of ancient granite. This was the Seychelles. For millions of years, it was wedged between India and Madagascar as tectonic forces tore the world apart. Then, about 66 million years ago, a final violent split happened. A massive volcanic event, tied to the famous Deccan Traps in India, severed the last connection. This left the Seychelles isolated in the middle of the brand new Indian Ocean. This is what makes the Seychelles so special. Unlike most islands, which are either volcanic or made of coral, the main islands here are granite. They are towering peaks of a submerged continental fragment, a true geological outlier. This fact isn't up for debate. Scientists agree that the Seychelles is, quite literally, a remnant of a lost landmass. But the question that hangs over this paradise is, was it ever more than just a piece of rock? For years, divers exploring the waters around the main island of Baiae have shared tales of something strange. Down past the vibrant coral, they've described encountering huge stone structures that just don't feel entirely natural. Rumors speak of walls, platforms, and even what look like steps, all on a massive scale. One of the most talked about sites isn't even underwater. It's right on the coast. It's called Ros l'Escalier, which means rock steps. And when you see it, the name makes perfect sense. It's a series of flattened surfaces that look for all the world like a grand ancient staircase, climbing from the sea into the thick jungle. The symmetry is shocking. The steps are so regular that for generations, people have wondered if they could be man-made. Some have even spun tales of them being carved by ancient Phoenician explorers over 3,000 years ago as a landmark. Another puzzling formation is known as Mire Demon, or the Devil's Wall. It's a baffling jumble of interlocking granite boulders that appear to form a crude yet deliberate wall. The pieces fit together like a giant, chaotic jigsaw puzzle, creating a barrier that has sparked local legends for ages. When you put these coastal oddities together with the divers' tales of similar submerged shapes, it's easy to see how a compelling theory was born, that these are not natural formations at all, but the sunken monuments of a civilization that once called this microcontinent home.
So what's the real story here? Are we looking at the ruins of a lost world? Or is there another explanation? This is where things get interesting, as the path splits between science and an enduring mystery. First, the scientific take. Geologists have looked at these formations, and they make a powerful evidence-based case for a natural origin. They argue that Ros Les Scali, the incredible rock steps, is a textbook example of a geological feature called a dike. This is when molten magma from deep in the earth pushes up into cracks in the existing granite. This new rock is often harder than the granite around it. Over millions of years, the softer rock wore away, leaving the tougher, more resistant dike exposed, creating the step-like look we see today. Scientists believe the same forces are behind the rumored underwater structures. The breakup of Gondwana was incredibly violent. The granite bedrock was fractured, twisted, and shattered. Magma intrusions created dikes and sills, and ages of erosion from wind and water sculpted them. They also point out that granite has a natural tendency to fracture at right angles, a process called orthogonal fracturing, which can create blocky, wall-like shapes that look artificial without any intelligent help. The Devil's Wall could just be a perfect example of this. And critically, there has never been a single credible archaeological find in the Seychelles. No tools, no pottery, no carvings, to back up the idea of an ancient civilization. And yet, the questions linger. For every scientific explanation, there's a nagging what if. Can natural fracturing and erosion really explain the startling symmetry of some of these formations? Believers in the ancient civilization theory argue that while geology is part of the story, it might not be the whole story. They ask, is it just a coincidence that these natural formations look so much like the architecture of known ancient cultures? What's really interesting is that the Seychelles isn't alone in this kind of mystery. It shares some strange similarities with another famous underwater enigma on the other side of the planet, the Yonaguni Monument. Off the coast of Japan sits a massive submerged rock formation with huge terraced platforms and sharp right angles. Many, including a few marine geologists, believe it has to be man-made. Just like in the Seychelles, mainstream science suggests Yonaguni is a natural, though very unusual, geological formation shaped by tectonics and strong ocean currents. But, also like in the Seychelles, the sheer symmetry and its resemblance to a stepped pyramid lead many to believe it's a lost ruin from a forgotten chapter of human history. When you put these two mysteries side by side, it sparks a huge question. Are these just isolated geological flukes? Or could they be part of a global pattern, faint hints of a widespread, ancient maritime people whose monuments were lost to the sea when the last ice age ended and sea levels rose? Maybe the legends of sunken lands aren't just myths, but fractured memories of a world that was very, very real. So, what really lies beneath the waves of the Seychelles? Is it a stunning testament to the raw power of geology? A showcase of how plate tectonics, volcanoes, and erosion can work together to create a beautiful illusion of design? The scientific evidence certainly leans that way. It offers a logical, complete explanation for the granite steps and submerged walls, grounding the mystery in the known story of our planet. Or is it something more? Are these formations the last silent ruins of a civilization that rose and fell on a continent now mostly underwater? Are we looking at ancient monuments left by a people totally erased from our history books? In the end, there is no archaeological proof, no smoking gun to confirm a lost civilization ever lived here. But the formations remain, beautiful and baffling. They challenge our assumptions and fire up our imagination. They represent the ultimate clash between what science tells us is likely
and what our spirit of curiosity wants to believe is possible. The ocean keeps its secrets well, and maybe the greatest secret in the Indian Ocean isn't a treasure of gold or jewels, but the silent stone story of the sunken monuments of the Seychelles. What do you think? Are these formations a masterpiece of nature or the gravestone of a lost world? Let us know your theory in the comments below. The underwater temple platform in the Andaman Sea, built by a forgotten culture? The Andaman Sea. Its turquoise waters and remote islands hide a world of secrets. For thousands of years, this sea has been home to some of the most isolated people on Earth, living links to a past so ancient it makes the pyramids look young. But beneath the waves, other legends are stirring. Modern whispers of a lost city, a colossal temple with steps plunging into the abyss, built by a culture so old it's been completely forgotten. It's a story that feels like a classic, the eternal myth of Atlantis, a tempting idea that a great civilization was simply swallowed by the sea. The Andaman Sea is filled with ancient shipwrecks. We know that for a fact. But could it be hiding something much, much bigger? For years, speculation about a sunken civilization has swirled around these waters. So what's the real story here? Join us as we dive in to separate the hard evidence from the fantastic theories of a forgotten world. While the legend of a sunken city is what grabs the headlines, the truth of what we've actually found beneath the Andaman's waves is, in its own way, even more astounding. For archaeologists, this sea isn't the tomb of one lost city, but a sprawling graveyard of countless ships. It's a massive underwater museum of history. For centuries, the Andaman Sea was a critical superhighway for trade, a kind of liquid silk road connecting the great empires of the East to the markets of the West. Long before European explorers ever dreamed of sailing around Africa, this was a bustling corridor of commerce, and the proof is scattered all over the seabed. Underwater archaeology teams have pieced together an incredible story from these silent wrecks. Their work isn't about finding pirate treasure. It's about understanding how our modern world was built, one voyage at a time. They've uncovered everything from the elegant stitched-together dhows of Arab traders to the massive junk ships from Imperial China, each one a perfect time capsule. The cargo these ships carried tells the story of a vibrant, deeply connected ancient world. Can you imagine the moment of discovery? A diver's light hitting a crate of pristine Tang Dynasty ceramics that haven't seen the sun in over 1,000 years. Archaeologists have found tens of thousands of artifacts, precious gold, intricate silver, and a stunning variety of pottery, from the green-glazed Celadon wares of Thailand to the iconic blue and white porcelain that would later take Europe by storm. This isn't just a list of old stuff. It's hard evidence. It allows us to rebuild the story of ancient shipbuilding, map out trade routes, and understand the economies of entire empires. We now know for a fact that Chinese goods were being traded directly into the Indian Ocean as early as the 9th century, thanks to the incredible Belitung shipwreck, an Arab dhow that sank while carrying over 60,000 artifacts from China. The floor of the Andaman Sea doesn't tell a story of one lost civilization, but of a dynamic, multicultural world of sailors, merchants, and explorers. That's the truth, written in broken hulls and scattered pottery.
Okay, so with all these scientists mapping the seafloor, has anyone actually gone looking for this legendary city? Well, yes and no. Every scientific dive is in a way a search for the unknown, but hunting for one specific monumental building is a whole different ballgame. Modern underwater archaeology is a serious high-tech operation. Researchers use sophisticated tools like side-scan sonar to paint a detailed picture of the seabed, looking for any strange shapes that don't look natural. They send down remotely operated vehicles, or ROVs, to be their eyes and hands in depths far too dangerous for a human diver. But the Andaman Sea is enormous, and the seafloor is a chaotic landscape of deep trenches, volcanic mountains, and steep ridges. The whole region sits on an active tectonic boundary. Earthquakes and sinking land are just a part of life here. Geologically speaking, it's entirely possible for a piece of coastline to disappear under the waves, and that geological reality is what gives the myth its hook, that little sliver of possibility. If the land itself can sink, why not a city? This puts the Andaman mystery right next to other controversial underwater sites around the world. The most famous is the Yonaguni Monument, just off the coast of Japan. It's a massive rock formation with what looks like huge flat terraces, perfect 90-degree angles, and giant steps. To some, it's clearly a man-made pyramid, a city sunk by an earthquake. To geologists, it's an amazing but completely natural rock formation carved by strong ocean currents. The debate over Yonaguni shows you the biggest challenge. How can you be sure if something was carved by people, or just by nature? Could a structure like that exist in the Andaman Sea, written off by scientists as just a weird-looking rock? It's a cool thought. But here's the bottom line. Despite decades of surveys that have found all those shipwrecks, no one has ever reported finding anything that looks like the legendary temple platform. There have been no confirmed sonar pings of enormous geometric structures, no ROV footage of monumental steps leading into the darkness. The search has revealed a world of trade, but the lost city is still a ghost.
This brings us to the heart of it all, pulling apart the facts from the fiction. The myth is a fantastic story of a great forgotten culture, advanced enough to build massive structures, that was wiped out in a catastrophe. It's an idea that plugs into other grand theories of lost continents like Lemuria or the Tamil legend of Kumari Kandam. It's a story about a lost golden age, a story we humans have been telling ourselves for thousands of years. Then you have the facts, backed by evidence. The archaeological record in the Andaman Sea tells a different but honestly a more exciting story. It's a story of movement, connection, and incredible risk. The sunken evidence we have isn't of a city that stayed in one place, but of the ships that moved between great civilizations. The sea wasn't a home, it was a highway. The artifacts don't point to one single lost culture, but to a buzzing intersection of people from Arabia, India, Southeast Asia, and China. So, if there's no real evidence, why does the idea of a sunken city stick around? It's probably a mix of things. First, we all have a fascination with the Atlantis story, the romantic dream of a perfect society lost to the waves. Second, the Andaman Sea is just a genuinely mysterious place. It's home to the Sentinelese, a tribe that has remained almost completely cut off from the modern world. When a place holds real, living mysteries like that, it's easy to imagine it holds even bigger secrets. Maybe the best way to think about it is this. The Andaman Sea isn't the site of one great sunken city. It's an underwater Silk Road. The shipwrecks are the lost caravans. Each one was a small tragedy for its crew, but together they tell a grand story of human ambition and discovery. The real, lost world isn't a city of stone, but the collective memory of thousands of sailors whose stories now rest in the silent deep. The line between history and myth can get pretty blurry, and the ocean is one of the last frontiers that still holds truly massive mysteries. What do you think is the most fascinating underwater mystery out there, whether it's a real shipwreck or a legendary city? Let me know in the comments below. I really do read them all. And if you enjoyed this trip into the past, make sure you subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss our next exploration. The story of the Andaman sunken city is a classic battle between a great myth and an even greater truth. The myth is a powerful tale, but the truth, written in the wreckage of ancient ships, is a more complex and amazing story about a connected, buzzing, ancient world. The real lost world of the Andaman Sea isn't one place, but 1,000 stories scattered across the seabed. The depths have given us a graveyard of ships, a lost chapter of global history. But the ocean is huge, and over 80% of it is still a complete mystery. It remains unmapped, unobserved, and unexplored. We've found the lost caravans, but we haven't walked every mile of the road yet. What other secrets is the Andaman Sea still holding on to? And what truths, or what new myths, are still waiting to be discovered in the dark? The sunken city of Cuba's Isla de la Juventud, pre-Columbian ruins beneath the waves. Back in 2001, something impossible showed up on a sonar scan off the coast of Cuba. Massive geometric structures, almost 2,300 feet beneath the waves. The first reports were electric, buzzing with talk of a sunken city, complete with pyramids and roads that could rewrite the history of the Americas. But then, the story just vanished. Mainstream archaeology went silent, and the tale of this potential lost city faded from the headlines completely. So, what did a team of engineers really find in those deep waters off the Guanahacobibe Peninsula? And why did this incredible story get all but ignored? Today, we're looking at the strange evidence for Cuba's sunken city and asking the question the experts won't. Are we looking at the ruins of a forgotten pre-Columbian civilization? This whole story doesn't start with archaeologists hunting for ancient ruins. It starts with engineers looking for treasure. In 2000, a Canadian company, Advanced Digital Communications, or ADC, was working on a project with the Cuban government. The team was led by marine engineer Paulina Zalitsky and her husband, Paul Weinswag. Their goal was pretty straightforward: map the seabed and find sunken Spanish galleons. They were scanning the waters at the westernmost tip of Cuba, in a deep channel that separates the island from Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. Using advanced side-scan sonar, they painted a picture of the ocean floor, expecting a whole lot of mud and sand. But then, their screens lit up with something that made no sense. Across an area of nearly 500 acres, they saw a series of strange, symmetrical, and geometric stone structures. These weren't the messy remains of a shipwreck. The images showed organized patterns, sharp angles, and parallel lines that looked a lot like an urban grid. Zalitsky and Weinswag were floored. The shapes seemed completely artificial in the middle of a barren seascape. They knew they'd stumbled onto something big. Zalitsky herself said it looked like a large urban center, but admitted it would be totally irresponsible to say for sure without more evidence. The team went looking for colonial history, but may have accidentally found something far, far older. With these tantalizing sonar images, the mystery was just getting started. What were these shapes that looked so designed? To get a better view, the ADC team went back to the site in July 2001. This time they brought a remotely operated vehicle, or ROV, a deep-sea robot that could send back video from the crushing depths of over 2,000 feet. The footage from the ROV was intriguing. It showed what looked like enormous blocks of stone, some appearing to be cut and stacked on top of one another. The discoverers believed the images showed possible pyramids and building foundations, all arranged in a planned, grid-like pattern. Paul Weinswag argued that the scene showed too much organization, too much symmetry, too much repetition of form, to be a freak of nature. The scale they proposed was staggering. The team speculated that some individual structures might be as large as pyramids in Egypt. Based on the geology of the area, they threw out a speculative age, 6,000 years old. If that were true, this site would be 1,500 years older than the pyramids at Giza, and would completely change our understanding of ancient American history. The sonar scans and video footage looked, for all the world, like a city lost to the waves. It seemed like a discovery that should have kicked off one of the biggest archaeological digs in history. Instead, it was met with a wall of skepticism, and eventually, silence. The announcement of a possible sunken city off Cuba caused a brief media frenzy. Headlines wondered about a lost civilization, with some even whispering the name Atlantis. But almost as fast as the story broke, the scientific community started pumping the brakes, raising serious questions that cast a shadow over the whole discovery. The biggest problem? The depth. The structures are sitting between 2,000 and 2,500 feet down. According to geologists, for that piece of land to sink so deep would have taken an immense amount of time. Marine geologist Manuel Iturralde, who was invited to consult on the find, estimated it would have taken at least 50,000 years for that part of the seafloor to submerge to where it is today. And that's the core of the controversy. 50,000 years ago, no known human culture was building monumental architecture. An expert at Florida State University said the structures were simply out of time and out of place. If they are man-made, they belong to a civilization far more advanced than any we know of from that era. Skeptics, like the famous oceanographer Robert Ballard, offered a different theory. These aren't ruins at all, but just really weird-looking natural rock formations. They argue that nature can sometimes create geometric patterns that trick our brains into seeing intelligent design. Iturralde himself, while calling the formations extremely peculiar, cautioned that nature can produce things that are hard to explain geologically. This same debate rages around other sites, like the Yonaguni Monument off the coast of Japan. The final, and most frustrating, roadblock is the lack of physical proof. To prove these structures are artificial, you need more than pictures. You need a piece of one. You need to drill into a block, find a tool mark, or an inscription. To this day, no physical evidence has ever been recovered from the site. What if it's real? All right, let's push past the skepticism for a minute and just ask, what if it's real? What if Paulina Zalitsky and Paul Weinswig really did find a 6,000-year-old sunken city? The implications would be world-changing. First, it would completely shatter the timeline of civilization in the Americas. The great empires we know, the Olmec, Maya, and Aztec, showed up thousands of years after this city would have been drowned. A sophisticated urban society in the Caribbean that predates the Egyptian pyramids would force a total rewrite of history. It would mean advanced cultures rose and fell in the Americas long before we ever thought possible. Second, it begs the question, who were these people? Zalitsky herself speculated they might have lived on a land bridge that once connected Cuba to Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. What's interesting is that this idea lines up with the stories of the native Yucatec people, who have ancient legends of an ancestral island that vanished under the waves. Could this be the physical proof of that story? A discovery like this would also fuel other controversial ideas about a forgotten chapter in human history, a time of advanced civilizations wiped out by a global cataclysm. While the discoverers have stayed away from the Atlantis label, you can't ignore the parallels. A high-tech society, a huge city, a catastrophic sinking. The story feels incredibly familiar and echoes flood myths found in cultures all over the world. If this site were ever confirmed, it would prove that our picture of the ancient world is missing some major pieces. It would suggest we're a species with amnesia, with whole chapters of our story lost to the deep ocean and the even deeper gulf of time. After the initial buzz died down, the story of the Cuban underwater city mostly went cold. Years have passed with no real answers, which leads to the biggest question of all. Why hasn't there been more research? With even a slim chance of a history-making discovery, why isn't every major university scrambling to figure this out? The official reasons are mostly practical. Deep-sea exploration is ridiculously expensive and technologically difficult. Putting together a mission with the gear needed to take core samples from hard rock over 2,000 feet down requires a ton of money and political goodwill. In fact, a planned exploratory mission was reportedly canceled due to a lack of funding. But for many people who follow this story, that explanation doesn't feel quite right. They point to what they see as a pattern of neglect from the mainstream academic world. The argument is that the find is just too problematic. It doesn't fit the accepted story of ancient history, so it's easier to write it off as a geological anomaly than to deal with the consequences if it's real. This leaves us in a frustrating limbo. The discoverers, ADC, stand by their findings. The skeptical scientific community remains unconvinced without a physical sample, and the rest of us are left with some wild images and one heck of a mystery. Without a new expedition, the debate will never be settled. More than 20 years after those first sonar blips lit up a screen, the sunken city of Cuba is still a complete enigma. We have sonar maps that look like a city grid. We have video of massive symmetrical-looking stones, and we have a profound scientific disagreement. Are these the ruins of a lost civilization, or just a grand illusion, carved by the random forces of geology? Until a new expedition heads down with the right tools, the Cuban underwater formation will remain one of the greatest archaeological mysteries of our time. The evidence is sitting right there, but its true meaning is lost in the darkness.
waiting to be rediscovered. The underwater ziggurat of the Coral Sea. Ancient Mesopotamian design in the Pacific? What if a single story, whispered on the internet, could rewrite everything we think we know about the ancient world? We're taught that the great civilizations of the past were islands, separated by vast and impassable oceans. But what if they weren't? What if there was a global, seafaring people who left their mark in the most unexpected places? For years, a tantalizing story has circulated in the digital shadows, accompanied by grainy images of a strange, stepped pyramid discovered in the deep sea off the coast of Australia. And the most shocking part? It looks impossibly like an ancient Mesopotamian ziggurat. Could this be the proof of a lost global civilization that mainstream history says never existed? The legend begins in the Coral Sea, a remote stretch of the Pacific Northeast of Australia. For most, it's known for vibrant reefs and marine life. But according to a persistent theory, it's also home to a world-changing secret. Proponents point to what they claim are sonar maps and satellite images showing a colossal structure rising from the seabed. They describe something that just shouldn't be there, a massive symmetrical pyramid with distinct terraced levels, like giant steps leading to a flat top. The structure is said to be immense, dwarfing any shipwreck and showing a geometry that seems to defy nature. The images shared online are often blurry and ambiguous, but they fuel a powerful narrative. In these murky shapes, people see a design that feels engineered, deliberate. The location itself is the biggest puzzle. This isn't the coast of Iraq or the plains of ancient Sumer. This is the Pacific, a part of the world supposedly untouched by these ancient architectural traditions. If it were real, the find would be more than just an anomaly. It would be a revolution. It forces us to ask, who could have built it, and why is it at the bottom of the ocean? The mystery gets even deeper when you compare the supposed shape of this underwater structure to the ziggurats of ancient Mesopotamia. Picture the Great Ziggurat of Ur in modern-day Iraq. It's a terraced, step pyramid built nearly 4,000 years ago as a temple, a stairway to the heavens for the gods. Its design is iconic, a signature of one of humanity's earliest civilizations. Now, look again at the supposed sonar readings from the Coral Sea. The similarity, theorists argue, is undeniable. They highlight the broad base, the stepped platforms, and the flat top where a shrine might have stood. How could a design so specific, so culturally distinct, show up thousands of miles away and thousands of years later, buried under the waves? Mainstream history has no answer because it says this is impossible. The cultures of the ancient Pacific were completely separate from those of the Middle East. There was no contact, no exchange of architectural plans. This is the heart of the fringe theory, that the structure is a relic of a forgotten age, proof of a seafaring culture that connected the entire world long before recorded history. They ask, is this the work of Mesopotamian explorers? Or does it point to an even older, common ancestor to both cultures, a legendary lost civilization like Atlantis or Mu, whose ruins lie scattered across the globe? The implications are huge, suggesting the history in our textbooks is just a fraction of the real story. So, what happens when we step away from the speculative forums and look at what scientists and marine surveyors have actually found? The narrative takes a sharp turn. The underwater ziggurat doesn't appear on any official maritime charts, geological surveys, or in any peer-reviewed scientific papers. It simply doesn't exist. So where did this incredible story come from? The claims are a distorted version of a very real and arguably even more spectacular natural wonder, Ball's Pyramid. And the most important fact is that Ball's Pyramid isn't underwater at all. It's the world's tallest volcanic sea stack, a breathtaking shard of rock that shoots 562 meters, over 1,800 feet, straight out of the ocean. It's not a ziggurat built by human hands, but a monument carved entirely by nature. Geologists have studied Ball's Pyramid extensively. It's the heavily eroded remnant of a shield volcano that formed around 6.4 million years ago. It is ancient, but not in human terms. It predates our entire species by millions of years. So what about those steps that look so artificial in blurry pictures? They're a classic example of differential erosion. The volcano is made of countless layers of lava flows. Some layers are harder rock, while others are softer. Over millions of years, the relentless force of wind and waves has worn away the softer layers more quickly, leaving the harder layers behind as natural step-like formations. There is zero evidence of quarrying, tool marks, or any human modification. It is a geological masterpiece, not an archaeological one. For believers in a lost chapter of history, the geological explanation isn't the end of the story. It's the start of a deeper one. They argue that dismissing it as just a rock misses the point. The question for them isn't just what Baal's pyramid is now, but what it might have been to people in the distant past. To understand their view, we have to look at one undeniable, world-changing event: the end of the last ice age. Around 20,000 years ago, sea levels were about 125 meters lower than they are today. As the ice sheets melted, the oceans rose dramatically, drowning enormous stretches of coastal land worldwide. Off the coast of Australia alone, an area nearly 1.5 times the size of the United Kingdom was swallowed by the sea. What civilizations, towns, or sacred sites were lost to the waves? This isn't just speculation, it's a geographical fact that huge, once habitable lands now lie deep underwater. This is where proponents connect it to other controversial sites, like the Yonaguni Monument off the coast of Japan. To this day, a debate rages. Most geologists are sure it's a stunning natural formation, but others see straight lines and right angles that seem man-made. Could Baal's pyramid be part of a similar story? The alternative theory suggests that maybe ancient people didn't build the pyramid, but used it. Perhaps this colossal natural spire served as a sacred mountain for a civilization living on the now submerged coast. Maybe the terraces weren't built, but were revered by a people whose world was about to vanish. This reframes the whole mystery. The question is no longer, did Mesopotamians build a ziggurat in the Pacific, but something far more fascinating. What if the existence of a spectacular natural landmark like Baal's pyramid was the seed for a civilization's stories and beliefs? What if a lost seafaring culture saw these towering volcanic remnants not as random geology, but as natural temples or homes for their gods? What if our search for perfect man-made ruins is blinding us to a different kind of ancient footprint, one where humanity adapted to and sanctified the natural world? We know the planet's geography was radically different after the Ice Age. What would it do to our neat timeline of history if advanced maritime cultures existed then, navigating between sacred natural monuments along coastlines now deep underwater? Could the global myths of a great flood, of a sunken homeland like Atlantis or Lemuria, be a distant, fractured memory of this very real geological event? What if the clues aren't in a single, impossible artifact, but in the meeting of geology, mythology, and the undeniable reality of our planet's changing face? The lines between what is natural and what is artificial can blur, potentially hiding a chapter of human history we are only just beginning to imagine. So what's your take? Is Baal's pyramid simply a magnificent, multi-million-year-old volcanic rock, a testament to the raw power of our planet? Or is it possible that the scientific explanation, while correct, is missing a human element? Could it have been a sacred site for a lost civilization whose world was swallowed by the sea? Let us know your theories in the comments below. We read them all, and your perspective is a vital part of this conversation. We're left with two compelling stories. On one hand, we have the firm, evidence-based conclusion of geology. Baal's pyramid is a natural wonder, carved by time and nature, not by people. On the other, we have the tantalizing questions that won't go away. Whispers of lost maps, echoes in ancient myths, and the fact that vast, once habitable lands now lie silent in the deep. This strange Gothic spire of rock is already a place of legend. It's home to the Lord Howe Island stick insect, a creature thought to be extinct for 80 years before being rediscovered there in 2001. It's a place that literally holds on to lost life. So we're left with a final thought. Is it possible for a place to be both a natural masterpiece and a forgotten historical marker? Perhaps the greatest mysteries aren't hidden in impossible artifacts, but in how we choose to see the world that's right in front of us. Perhaps the truth isn't a single answer, but a story far more complex and far more interesting than we ever dared to believe.
The submerged ruins of the Red Sea. Could these be the remains of the Exodus route? It's one of the most incredible stories ever told. A story of liberation against impossible odds, where the very laws of nature seem to bend for one pivotal moment. The parting of the Red Sea. For centuries, this story has been a flashpoint between faith and science. For believers, it's a testament to divine power. For many skeptics, it's a foundational myth, a legend with no basis in reality. For decades, the debate was fueled by some tantalizing but very controversial claims. Grainy sonar images and coral-encrusted shapes on the seafloor, said to be the fossilized remains of a doomed Egyptian army. But what if everyone has been looking in the wrong place? While the world has been focused on these hotly debated and frankly often debunked theories, a new generation of archaeologists and scientists, armed with cutting-edge technology, is pointing to an entirely new location for the Exodus route, and what they're uncovering could rewrite a pivotal chapter of ancient history. The biblical account in the book of Exodus is a story etched into the minds of billions. The Israelites, enslaved in Egypt, make their escape under the leadership of Moses, but their freedom is almost cut short. Trapped between the pursuing might of Pharaoh's chariots and a massive, impassable body of water, their journey seems destined to end in tragedy. The text describes them being cornered at a place called Pi Hahiroth, with the sea in front of them and the wilderness closing in. What happens next is the stuff of legend. Moses stretches his hand over the sea, a powerful east wind blows all night, and the waters are pushed back, turning the seabed into dry land. The Israelites cross between two literal walls of water, one on their right and one on their left. When Pharaoh's army, with its formidable chariots, charges into the same path, the waters return. The entire army is swallowed by the sea, securing the Israelites' escape and cementing the event as a cornerstone of faith. It's a powerful story, but for historians and archaeologists, it presents a huge problem. For over a century, despite extensive searches, there's been a stark lack of direct archaeological evidence for a mass migration through the Sinai or the catastrophic loss of an entire army. Egypt's own former Minister of Antiquities, Dr. Zahi Hawass, has famously called the story a myth, stating that from an archaeological perspective, there's no historical evidence it ever happened. This has created a deep chasm between the biblical narrative and the scientific record, a gap that many have tried to bridge.
The most famous and controversial attempt to bridge that gap started back in the late 1970s. An amateur biblical archaeologist and adventurer named Ron Wyatt made a series of truly astonishing claims. He announced that the real crossing point wasn't the main body of the Red Sea, but a specific spot on the Gulf of Aqaba, Nuweiba Beach. Geographically, the site is compelling. Nuweiba is a massive, flat beach, easily large enough to have held a huge number of people. Even more intriguing, Wyatt claimed there was a subtle underwater land bridge stretching from the beach across the Gulf's deep waters. This is where the story took a sensational turn. Wyatt and his team conducted scuba expeditions and came back with photos of what they claimed were sunken Egyptian chariot wheels, axles, and even human and horse bones, all crusted in coral. The images were stunning. One photo in particular showed what looked like a golden, four-spoked chariot wheel, supposedly preserved because coral doesn't grow easily on gold. Supporters claimed that a wheel hub they retrieved was identified by Egyptian officials as belonging to the 18th dynasty, the correct time period for the Exodus. For many, this was it, the proof. the smoking gun that vindicated the biblical story. These images and claims spread like wildfire, appearing in documentaries, books, and countless online videos, where they are still presented as fact today. But for the mainstream archaeological and scientific community, Ron Wyatt's discoveries were far from conclusive. In fact, they were met with immediate and intense skepticism.
The problem with Wyatt's findings wasn't about faith. It was about a lack of scientific rigor. First, none of his discoveries were ever published in a peer-reviewed scientific journal. The artifacts he claimed to have found were never made available for independent examination by trained archaeologists. That's a critical step in authenticating any historical find. And without it, the claims are just that, claims. Marine biologists and geologists offered other explanations for the photos. They pointed out that certain species of coral can naturally grow in circular patterns, often on a stalk, which can look a lot like a wheel and axle. Without bringing an artifact to the surface for proper analysis, it's impossible to tell if it's man-made or just a convincing trick of nature. Critics also highlighted numerous inconsistencies in Wyatt's stories, and his work has been almost universally debunked by professional scholars. Many of the most cited articles online about these chariot discoveries have even been traced back to satirical or fake news websites. The scholarly consensus remains firm. There is no verified, credible archaeological evidence of a drowned Egyptian army at the bottom of the Gulf of Aqaba. And while new speculative claims of chariot-like shapes have been reported by some media channels in 2025, these have not been verified or accepted by mainstream archaeology. The story of the chariot wheels, while compelling, is considered by most experts to be a case of wishful thinking and pseudo-archaeology. So, is the case closed? Is the crossing just a myth? Not necessarily, because the answer might not be in the deep sea at all. The clue may lie in just two ancient Hebrew words. The search for historical truth is a complex puzzle, and every piece of evidence, even the debunked stuff, tells part of the story. If you find this journey through history and science as fascinating as we do, take a moment to subscribe to our channel and click the bell icon. We have a lot more to explore, and you won't want to miss what's coming next. For centuries, Bible translations have called the crossing site the Red Sea. But that's not what the original Hebrew text says. The term is Yam Suf. While Yam means sea, Suf does not mean red. It means reeds or rushes. It's the same word used to describe the reeds along the Nile where the baby Moses was hidden in a basket. This single linguistic detail changes everything. A deep, vast sea like the Gulf of Aqaba isn't a suitable environment for reeds. Reeds thrive in shallow, marshy, freshwater areas. This has led many scholars to shift their search away from the deep sea entirely and toward the marshlands and shallow lakes that once dotted the northern border of ancient Egypt, in the area of the Nile Delta. This brings us to the new location, a theory that doesn't rely on unsubstantiated artifacts, but on linguistics, geology, and physics. The search has moved from the Red Sea to a place that no longer exists in the same form, a body of water often identified as the ancient Lake of Tanis. What if the miracle of the crossing wasn't a suspension of the laws of nature, but an extreme yet entirely possible application of them? This is the core of a groundbreaking theory called wind set-down. The concept was researched in detail by a team of scientists led by Carl Drews at the University of Colorado Boulder. A wind set-down is a real, documented weather phenomenon. It's basically the opposite of a storm surge. When a powerful, sustained wind blows over a shallow body of water for a long time, it can literally push the water away, causing water levels to drop and expose the lakebed. Drews and his team used computer modeling to reconstruct the ancient geography of the eastern Nile Delta, which was once home to a large coastal lagoon, sometimes called the Lake of Tanis or Lake Menzaleh. Their simulations were based on archaeological and geological records of how the area looked over 3,000 years ago. They then simulated what would happen if a strong, steady east wind blew for 12 hours, just as described in the book of Exodus. The results were astonishing. The model showed that a wind of about 63 miles per hour could have pushed the 6-foot deep water back, exposing a land bridge 3 to 4 kilometers long and 5 kilometers wide. This dry passage would have stayed open for about 4 hours, plenty of time for a large group to cross. The simulations showed the water being pushed back into 2 areas, creating a passage with water on both sides, which closely matches the biblical description. Once the wind stopped, the water would have rushed back violently, easily trapping an army weighed down by heavy chariots in the muddy lake bed. This theory provides a scientifically plausible explanation for the event. It doesn't need chariot wheels at the bottom of a deep sea. It needs a shallow lake, a powerful wind, and perfect timing. It lines up with the original Hebrew Sea of Reeds, and it happens at a location that fits the geographical descriptions in the Exodus story. So, where does that leave us? On one hand, you have the sensational and widely debunked claims of sunken chariots in the deep Gulf of Aqaba, a theory that hangs on in popular culture but holds very little weight in the scientific community. On the other, you have a compelling scientific model centered on a sea of reeds in the Nile Delta, where a natural phenomenon called wind set-down could have parted the waters in a way that perfectly matches the ancient account. To be perfectly clear, there is still no definitive archaeological proof that the Exodus crossing happened at the Lake of Tanis or anywhere else. The wind set-down theory is a plausible mechanism, not a confirmation of the event itself. In fact, the general scholarly consensus is that a mass migration as described in the Bible has not been substantiated by the archaeological record. But the search continues. The story of the Exodus remains a powerful account of freedom and faith. This debate over the crossing highlights the fascinating and often tense intersection of science, archaeology, and belief. Whether it was a miracle of divine intervention or an extraordinary natural event, the parting of the waters continues to challenge us, forcing us to ask what is possible, what is provable, and what lies in the realm of enduring faith. The final answer may still be out there, waiting to be discovered.